Oh,
See, I've been doing it long enough that hopefully it just got like a smiling face rather than me just being like halfway through vaping and looking stoned. Um, but hello, everyone. Welcome to another First Reads episode with myself, Brian. And we are joined wonderfully by Jakob Tanner, author of Second Chance Swordsman, Tower Climber, God, You've More, Ascend. What's the other one?
no, my first series was Arcane Kingdom Online.
Arcane Kingdom Online. And yes, so delighted to have you here, Jakob. So I guess I will start off the questions with. No, actually, we had something to start off with because we were kind of told by Geneva. So, Jakob, if you'd like to lead us.
Well, I just want to say that I am equally delighted to be here. I'm really excited. And yeah, it's Mother's Day. So happy Mother's Day to everyone, all the mothers and everyone's mother. I hope you're having a nice day.
Except in Ireland and the UK, in
Yeah,
which case it was a while ago.
no greeting to them.
No, they can wait another like 8 or 9 months or 10 months. I don't know when Mother's Day is. I'm a terrible son. But I have a opening question for you, Jakob, and that is in the background behind you, you have a map, and then we also talked about the other map beside that map, and then you lifted your mug, and it is another map.
Oh my God, you're right. I'm
Why do
very
you have
happy.
so many maps?
I think this mug was a gift. So this came about by like these things in the background. So I have a map of London, UK where I live, and then I have a map of the UK over here.
Mm-hmm.
And I think back in the day, I mean, maps are, if you don't have a lot of money and you want to cover your blank, depressing walls, maps are pretty cheap. Like, I'm pretty sure this map is actually wrapping paper. I used to work at a bookstore, and this was
Mm-hmm.
wrapping paper that we used to sell. And I was
Oh,
like, ah,
incredible.
I can put it up as a poster.
So you used to work in Waterstones, wasn't it?
That is correct. Yeah.
And it's that's a bookshop chain that was painfully in Ireland for only a short period of time. I think they like closed a lot of their stores down. I think there might still be one or two in Dublin, but great bookshops. Did
Yeah.
you enjoy it there, or like?
Yeah, no, I look back very fondly at my time at Waterstones. And actually the managing director of the company is now also the managing director of Barnes and Noble in the States and is
Awesome.
hopefully trying to bring in a turnaround for bookstores. But yeah, no, I loved it. And now when I go into bookstores, I still have like all the ticks of someone who used to work in a bookstore where you start tidying up and like reshaping a table and zhuzhing it. And you just start doing it automatically. And it's very kind of terrifying. You're like, oh, too many years of my life was spent doing this. Yeah.
So, what are the like? Because a lot of the people here, like all of us readers, first and foremost, um, I guess the question is like, how do you piss off a bookshop employee? As in, like, because like they're usually the most attentive and like they love books too. So, like, how do you piss them off? What are the things?
Well, okay, so like actually the first thing that came to mind is I remember a customer once came in and just like asked me, they're like, "Do you like reading?" And I was just like, "I work at a what?" It was just like the oddest question, like why would I work here if I didn't like reading, you know? But so I guess you can get a lot of snobbery that comes in and yeah, and like but generally people are quite nice. Like I think compared to like if you think of being a bookstore as like retail, I
Hmm.
think it's probably I've never worked in like H&M or Zara or somewhere like that or Uniqlo, but I imagine, you know, you get tougher customers and it's like a harder vibe where generally people who are coming into a bookstore are more often than not pretty chill and like want to talk about books.
Yeah.
Um
But do you get like the stage four clingers that people that just go in and will spend their entire day in the bookshop and not buying anything and they're just there?
Yeah, I yeah, yeah, you definitely get those. But, like, No, well, so because the place where I worked for the
That was
longest,
me, by the way. That was 100% me all the time.
yeah,
I'd just be going
yeah,
like, "Oh, time to go to science fiction."
yeah. Well, that was me, and like even now that they like, I think bookstores at one point didn't always have cafes, but they seem like most bookstores have cafes in them.
Mhm,
And so they're just like designed to hang out at. Well, I was actually in Trafalgar Square, so a big Waterstone's right in the center of the city. So I had a lot of tourist traffic.
mhm.
So it was actually quite nice if there were like the regulars we did have were few and far between, and so they were our crazies.
Mhm.
And Yeah, no, it was nice. Yeah.
Yeah, so that's cool. And like you mentioned Trafalgar Square. So like London is like so you're living in London at the minute. But you're Canadian. So like
Yes.
how did this happen? Like what point in your life where you're like, fuck this, UK?
Well, yeah, so I studied here for a year during my undergrad. I did English literature. And then I didn't really know. I don't know. I guess like the thing is when you do a literature degree after you graduate, the cool thing is all doors of life are still open to you. Mainly because you haven't opened any, really. And and during that time I did a year abroad in London and I really liked it. And so I decided, oh, I'm gonna I'll move to London then. And I'll work in a bookstore and I'll write books. And so then I worked in a bookstore for 5 years and like I wrote a bunch of books. And then eventually none of those were early books that didn't really go anywhere. And then it was my fourth book that then I was like, I'm gonna self-publish this book. And that was
Yeah,
our Kingdom Online.
incredible. Like it's really, really inspiring in a way as well. Like, that you just took that leap of faith. And that you just like moved over and integrated and never lost your accent ever.
Yeah, well, very interesting of you to say that because when I do go back to Canada, they can sense a difference. And maybe it's just like I'm using Britishisms or like, some kind of slang or something, but they straight away, which is really weird because I'm like, I come back to London, everyone's like, you sound Canadian. You do not sound British in the slightest. So you're like,
Yeah.
where do I fit in? Where do I belong?
So when I was growing up, everyone said that my accent, I don't sound like I'm from my town.
Hmm.
So the town I'm from, somewhere on that map behind you is Dundalk, and that is like it's a distinctive enough accent, but I don't typically have it. I grew up in the countryside, and like just didn't really like pick it up. But when I went like, and I grew up all the way through school and stuff like that with people saying like, "You don't sound Irish. Where are you from?" Or like, "Are you from
Hmm.
D4, which is like a district in Dublin, which is typically posh." So they were like, "Oh, you sound posh. Like you're not from here." Like, and it was kind of like outsider, outsider. Don't sound Irish. Don't sound Irish. When I went over to America for the first time in my life, a girl came up to me and was like, "Oh my god, I love your Irish accent," and I was like, "You can tell that I'm Irish," and she was like, "Yeah, you are the most Irish person I've met." And like, and I was like,
Yeah.
oh my God, oh my God. Oh
That is
God.
true.
Melanie, how's your writing going? What chapter are you on now?
Oh, it's nice to
So
see Melanie. Hey,
yeah.
Melanie.
So Melanie is writing to a deadline at the minute, and she has given us full permission to push her or poke her whenever whenever she kind of goes off track. Clearly, short-term memory loss there. She did give us
She's
permission
here. I mean, okay, well, hold on, but I want to have an audience here for us. So,
Oh, absolutely. But we've
oh,
Harmon,
so Melanie,
we've
take a
Harmon,
break.
we've Lars,
Everyone
we've
needs a break.
Jez.
Hey, Armin.
But yeah, no, she can take a break and she can be here then. That's fine. Um, do you have the same sort of accent as Bongo? Who's Bongo?
Like
But
bongo, like bongoing, or maybe Bono. Maybe it's a typo, and he meant Bono
Bono.
from YouTube.
Oh God, Jesus no.
Yeah, there you go.
Um, but yeah, like there's many, many different. Jacob is a
Thank
valid
you,
reason to take a
Melody.
break.
Oh, sweetness.
Oh, was never. Yeah, Bono. Sorry. Oh, well done, Jacob. That was like trivia. That
Yeah,
was good. Um, but Bongo in
it's
Wales.
and it's late here. It's 9 p.m. and I go to it's Sunday night. So, I'm glad I'm quick on my feet because this is a sleepy time for me.
Jacob Bono Tanner.
I like it.
Yeah. But no, it's oh geez, I don't know. Like I sound nothing like Bono, I don't think. He's proper Dublin. But most of the people saying I sound like I was from Dublin don't know a Dublin accent. So
Well, and here's a question for you. When you went to America and you had your Irish accent and everyone was
Mhm.
like, did you feel like, whoa, like you were getting almost like you felt like a celebrity status almost like where people
Oh,
were like,
absolutely. It
yeah.
was like suddenly I was, and this sounds horrible, like, but I felt relevant, as in, like, I was like, oh my god, like, people like are actually drawn towards me, whereas I'm just one of anyone like growing up, whereas here I was something special, and
Mm,
I had only felt that once before when I went. Harmon, did you know there's a place in Dublin called Harmonstown? It has its own little train station, and everything. You could live in Harmonstown if you moved over. Um, but yeah, I really built up the Irish reputation, Melanie, and we didn't do much for the Irish reputation in Vegas, did we? But so anyway, not from Dublin. Anyway, but yeah, I lived in France for a year as part of college, and I didn't speak any French whatsoever. But because I spoke slowly and correctly, everyone wanted to speak English with me.
okay.
So they were all like, "Oh, you speak slowly and correctly. I can understand when Brian talks." Whereas the other girls, when they were speaking, they had much, stronger accents and spoke at speed. So
Yeah.
everyone would just like their eyes would just glaze over when people were listening to them. So,
And Jacob
um,
wants to come to Ireland. I guess. I don't remember saying that I did, but sure,
yeah. Oh
Ireland sounds
wow.
good.
Well, make us feel as though like you
No,
really want to
sorry,
come there,
sorry,
Jacob.
sorry. No, I 100% want to come. It just seems like there was like a conversational, like logistical step that was skipped. That was just Jacob wants to come to Ireland. Is that
Yeah.
your way of inviting me to Ireland? It's just saying, yeah, you want to be here.
In Vegas, we discussed this, and it was just like like I want to go to Ireland sometime, and then we
Well,
were
this is
like,
true
you
because
should
we are
absolutely
close.
come.
We
Yeah.
are close, and I do because you have quite a few people like the Irish contingent of indie writers seems strong, and particularly in our scene. And yeah, I'm jealous of all the American guys who have their retreats, Mountain Dale, all this stuff. They all seem to be hanging out all the time. And so, yeah, we definitely need to take advantage of our proximity and hang out more.
Absolutely. And I just want to say thank you, Richard, for the comment of the beta there. I really appreciate it. Richard was one of the people that beta read Quest Academy for me, and he enjoyed it. So that was really, really nice. So thank you very much for that, Richard. And I had no idea you were Welsh. I like you more now. So yeah.
I'm being warned not to go to Ireland because of organ scams.
Yeah, Lars is coming to Ireland next February, so I don't know what he's like telling you not to go. He like
Oh my
I
gosh.
don't remember a time where Lars was in Ireland, so he doesn't know firsthand that that happens or doesn't happen. So
That's
so
not
yeah.
like the most comforting or reassuring answer.
Yeah. As in like no, all like do you've met me. Do I strike you as the type of person that would harvest someone's organs? Your
No,
pause
no.
really hurts me, Jacob.
No,
I want you to know that hurts
my
me, and that the
answer.
chances of me carving you up have actually increased because of that pause. Okay?
No, you don't carve me up.
No, like I
Um,
did, like note that I said me and not Melanie, because if I said, "Can you imagine Melanie harvesting your organs?" and the answer would have been immediately yes.
of
Um,
course.
Drinking your liver away is not our fault. Just to caveat that, we didn't drink Harmon's liver. We're not cannibals in Ireland. That, that
The
just
Irish
pointing that out.
reputation. It is, some rumors are happening. Jacob, have you seen Hostel? That is what is awaiting you. I've actually
No,
never seen Hostel. It's too scary.
no, it honestly, don't worry about it. Like Chatfield's coming to Ireland in a few weeks. He's been to
Okay.
Ireland a few months ago, and he is alive. See?
Uh, yeah, that's okay. And he passed through London as well. He's doing a world tour. So I hung out with him
Absolutely.
a couple weeks ago as well, and it was great. And actually, you were a part of that hang because you were like on Discord and you were chatting, and then I kept
That's very
saying,
true.
I said, "Has Brian said anything more? What's happened? What's Brian doing?"
I love this. But yeah, no, it's and I also like I feel like Dimmy was also a part of the tour because like he was on Discord as well, pinging me when we were on holiday in Garda, which was lovely.
Yeah.
Um, you're someone who'd pet a cat while your henchman harvests the organs. Jesus Christ.
I
You
think the
are
go-to
now,
would
I
be
don't think that I would ever have the. I can absolutely see myself having henchmen someday, but I can't imagine you doing that, Jacob. I can only imagine you surrounded by henchmen, potentially being like, "Oh no, 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 no! Don't let me watch. No, no, no! You just do it in that other room."
Oh yeah, like what's the point of having henchmen? Like, why would you watch? Like, if you have henchmen, they can carry the emotional burden of the evil acts that need to get done, while I sit in the other room. I feel like that's why you have henchmen, right?
Absolutely, that is. I think that's it. Like you just coming out of the back room, holding two like bowls of ramen, being like, "Oh, all that torture
Yeah,
sounds like hungry work, guys or
yeah,
girls.
exactly.
Could be female henchmen. Who knows?"
Yeah, I don't discriminate. If they get the job done, they get the job done.
Ah, so Lars wants him to move to the Nordic region, so he keeps telling him that every other place in Europe wants to harvest my organs. Um, yeah. Wait, what's his thought process on Sweden? Like Nordic regions include Sweden, and Lars isn't a fan of
Jacob does not
Sweden.
have the evil vibes because I'm a wholesome boy.
Like it worries me how little you're investing in your henchman training. Um,
Oh yeah, that's
yeah.
true. I'm not overseeing them when they do evil deeds. This is
Hmm.
not, who
I
knows they
think
can trust.
Jez just had two boys so that he'd be able to train them up to be henchmen. Um, And sorry, Melanie tried to teach Jacob to slag people and he managed one insult before apologizing profusely.
Yeah, I mean, I do recall that. Yeah, I don't know, just like meanness is, I struggle. I struggle with it. And Canadians, we love to apologize.
So do the Irish.
Oh,
The
really?
Irish apologize all the time, except when we're talking to other Irish people and we're having banter. But if
Mm,
we're ever like worried that someone is like, potentially anything other than banter, we'll apologize.
okay.
It's like, sorry, you felt that way. Oh, sorry, I didn't mean that. I mean, sorry, what I meant was like, sorry. It's always
Yeah.
just, yeah, 1, 2, 3, 4. But yeah, Denmark doesn't really exist. It's a sub area of Sweden.
But
Nice.
thinking about what you were saying about how you went to America and everyone thought you were so cool with your Irish accent, I
Yeah.
kind of thought that was going to happen to me here in like the UK, and that never happened. Like I was walking along, like waiting to be a novelty that people thought was cool, and they were just like, "I saw 4 Canadians already today. Like, get out of my face."
And that is one of the things that I find really interesting is like how multinational like and diverse London is compared to other kind of city states. Where was this? Eyes wide shut situation with organ harvesting.
I mean, Harmon, you said you wanted to go to this thing. I said I'd work it out for you. I did you a favor.
Yeah. And we don't.
I like that.
It feels like another like Brexit referendum, Nathan. We don't.
Melanie
uh,
says, Irish people like Canadians, you get a better reception over here.
it is true. Like we literally sent half of our like population to Canada after the recession, and
Mm.
we're pretty sure like Canada and Australia hates us at the minute. But like it's but we do like them.
No, I mean, just like thinking about how hardcore people celebrate. I mean, this is probably not the best gauge of love for the Irish. I don't know how else you, but like St. Patty's Day was always like a big thing in Toronto. Whereas I feel like here it sort of is, it sort of isn't. It seems more obviously it's more complicated here. So,
Is Toronto where you're from?
yeah. Yeah.
So I visited Toronto 3 times,
Okay.
and really, really like Toronto. It is a very, very different place than what I was expecting.
Okay, what were you expecting and
So,
what was it?
so the with Canada, I was expecting obviously happy, happy, joy, joy, and what I experienced was like a lot more artisanal, bougie,
Okay,
like a little bit of self-absorbed in a lot of places, with
interesting.
But again, like there were some people like, I was like, is that guy like practicing for a script? I was like, no, he's just screaming. I was like, cool, good to know.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah. But I love the street names, Young and Blur. Like I just think that is the funniest like
That is,
sound.
that's downtown. That's that's the
Yeah.
place to be.
And you've like things like Whole Foods. You've like so many options for everything
Mm.
there. But it's like wouldn't want to drive there. I think it's bicycle everywhere kind of place.
Well, not I mean, it seems like 'cause I go back and I just think I've sort of started to like operate on the assumption that I'm just living in the UK. Obviously, I don't know what the future holds, but I'm sort of
Hmm.
accepting that my life is here and I'm settled here. And when I go back, the need to drive everywhere seems really intense. Like I guess you could cycle, but everything's just so spread apart and the trains aren't as good as they are here.
So
Um
one thing I would say though is that you have a UK passport, don't you?
No, I have not to get
Res
into my
permit.
yeah. I have resident status. So
Okay,
I have
that's cool. So one of the things though is that if like you become fully recognized by the UK, then you will have free right to work in Ireland.
oh really?
Um, yes, so that there's an agreement between Ireland and the UK because in 1973 we both joined the European Union together and stuff like that, and there's like a lot of stuff between the two countries. So because Northern Ireland as well is like it's essentially the UK,
Mm,
so you have like the freedom of work. But the thing is that we have a thing called the artist's exemption clause, which allows for the first 50,000 you earn through like writing or creative endeavors. If it's approved by them, first 50,000 is tax free.
yeah, that
Um,
sounds incredible. I felt like I've heard you mention that to me before, or I saw you
yeah.
mention it on Discord, and
I keep saying it.
yeah,
It's
yeah,
like,
'cause, like
oh, people want to go. It's like, oh yeah, we fields and shit, but we also have tax tax
yeah, and like
exemptions.
not to get like too deep in the weeds, like could I still live in London but like get myself like domiciled in Dublin or something and then have the artist I mean that's where I
Mm,
mean, you know,
mm.
you have options. But I
Yeah,
have to become British first.
I think that if you had a PPS number, which is the it's the national insurance number over there. If you have that in Ireland and that you have been paying taxes and stuff, or that you are a resident for a certain period of time, I'd need to look into it, but absolutely would look into it for you.
Yeah,
Um,
that's a cool vibe. Yeah, sweet. All right.
and Harman said if Ireland had a visa for him, only way it would be to get there through citizenship. If you marry Harman, then you'll also get the marriage credits and
So yeah, well, look, I'll marry Harmon. We'll like set up like some like organ stealing scam in Dublin, and all the money we make from that, it's our art, and we're not. Well, I mean, that'll be under the table anyway, so I don't think we'd have to worry about that. But
one of the ominous things in the comments is that Facebook user has just said Nathan Amy, and it's just Nathan Amy, and that is like, but Nathan is already in the comments under his own name, so so it's not
yeah,
Nathan.
and we were just talking about like organ donoring, and so it was sort of like
That's it.
just someone pointing us in the direction of you know
Hmm.
whose organs we need to steal first.
Yeah,
I don't know.
yeah.
I don't know.
So yeah, like it just a lot of stuff, happening here. But Owen Melanie asked if you said Patty's Day or Paddy's Day. There is a correct answer to this.
I said Paddy's Day.
That was absolutely fantastic. I also love how your entire body just like, I'm so sorry, Melanie. But yeah. Cool image tagged me by Jacob van der Toorn. But yes, so anyway, what was I going to say? We were talking about stuff. But yeah, no, I love Toronto. I love Toronto. It was really nice. One of my best friends lives there.
Mm,
The cost of living is insane. And like
I passed the test.
there are many tests. There are
Yeah,
many,
yeah.
many tests. But yeah, it's but yeah, no, Toronto's lovely. So I guess what I'd like to talk about is your books and your writing. So like,
Mm.
how did this all kind of start? As in, like, would you mind maybe giving me the kind of the progression of you since when you like first started writing, how you maybe discovered Game Lit RPG, and how that kind of manifested over your works to where we are today.
Sure. I mean, how far back do you want me to start in terms of like my writing journey?
I think that most of these interviews go on for 2 hours, so I would like you to start from the day you were born.
All right, let's go. Okay, yeah. So my parents my mom is retired now, but was a cookbook editor and worked from home. And then my dad was kind of like a business journalist. And and so yeah, and also worked from home. So just sort of like uh writers in the family, literary family sort of thing. And so they are always kind of just encouraged me to do that kind of stuff. And so I think when I was like 12 or 13, there was the Toronto Star newspaper had a like children's section, like in
Mhm.
print they'd send called Brand New Planet. And I became like a star reporter for the Brand New Planet. And then it was cool. It was like I'd get sent like comic books or toys or video games, and then I get to
Mhm.
review them and stuff. And it was really cool. And I got paid like 25 bucks an article and stuff, which when you're like 12 or 13, that's nothing to sneeze at.
Absolutely.
And and then it was just really cool seeing your sort of like name in print. And so I like caught the bug early to be like, ooh, this is cool. Like I like this. Um and then yeah, after that, then I just sort of like then yeah, 'cause that newspaper had a peak at like 13, 14. So then
Mhm.
after that, I was like a little bit lost in the weeds,
Mhm.
because I didn't know where to go. I felt like I peaked too early. And yeah, I was just been writing stories and not really like I had this sort of like a really sort of I was reading all sorts of stuff. So I was like kind of pretentious reading a lot of classics, but then
Mhm.
in my mind, the classics were confused. Like, I would nowadays, like after going to like university and stuff, like classics would be, they've brainwashed me into thinking of it one way. Whereas before I would be like Jane Austen, Lord of the Rings, they're the same thing. They're a classic. Like I have like a very weird sense of like genre distinction and stuff. Um, and yeah, so then I was just writing, and I went to university and I was writing short stories. Wasn't sure if I wanted to be an academic. um Kind of writing literary fiction, I guess, what it would be called, that I don't know. And then finally when it came time to graduate, I knew I wanted to be a writer. And yeah, I guess I just decided I'll move to London, I'll work in a bookstore, and I'll start writing. And for that first year or so, I was writing. Just working in the bookstore began to change the way I thought about things because I could see, oh, what are people buying? What are people reading? What are they actually reading? And
Mhm.
sort of stuff, because like based on my parents, they came from like maybe more academic backgrounds. All of this really cool stuff like crime fiction, horror writing, fantasy, some of the stuff I'd sort of surface level read, I was discovering so much more of it so quickly working at this bookstore. And yeah, and so then so during that, then I sort of switched gears. I wasn't ready to write novels yet. I found writing, I was
Mhm.
very scared about the idea of writing a novel. So I just stuck completely to short stories. But I started writing sci-fi short stories and sending them to like Asimov's magazine and Analog and all these like old
See you later,
places where
Melanie.
fair point. I better go right. So I actually make this deadline. Jacob, keep being awesome. Thanks, Melody. See you soon. And yes, I was sending to these magazines where like this is where George R. Martin and stuff. That's where he like started.
Mhm.
And they were considered places that would pay like 10 cents per word or something. So you could, at least in my head, if I could like if every story I wrote and sent to them,
It's
got
published.
published, I would do pretty good. But none of that happened. But I was sending stories to them. And then eventually one day I started writing a story where I just was able to sort of see it somehow, where I went, oh, it could expand this way, and then this
Mhm.
way, and this way, and this way. And that ended up being my first novel. And it was kind of like sort of like a Hunger Games Divergent style, not like
Mhm.
YA dystopia novel. and I sent it out to agents and didn't hear back from many, but I did hear back from one woman who, because when you send to agents, you send like your first 3 chapters. And I remember hearing back from one woman where she was like, "Yeah, love the first 3 chapters, send me the rest." And that
And
was
it
just
didn't
like,
exist. Did it
that was like,
exist?
no, it did exist. It did exist.
Oh.
It did exist. It did exist. But it was just like an early moment of like, because in the end, that woman rejected me and didn't want the book or whatever. But like, it felt exciting. Like it went, whoa, here I am. But then that nothing came of that. So I wrote another book, and the agents, sort of similar thing happened. And I wrote another book, and the agents, again, wasn't really breaking through. And so then it was a friend of mine said, you should self-publish that, your most recent book that you finished. And I was like, okay, good idea. And I started researching, and then I started asking questions like, is there a market for what I wrote? And then trying to figure out, well, what is it that I wrote? And it was like hard-boiled, male-led YA crime, which is not a genre that anybody is looking for. And
Not
uh,
many. There are dozens of them.
yeah,
Dozens of readers.
And like if you were gonna write crime in YA, I think psychological thriller, female-led, that would be sort of what I think people are into and reading. Like sort of like Gone Girl or Girl on the Train, but for teenagers. But that wasn't what I had done. And so then I just realized I could just sort of see the early mistake I could see when reading about self-publishing that people made was that they've written a book, they've gone the traditional way, and that's not worked out, and now they think they're going to self-publish it, and that's going to lead to riches or something. And I quickly surmised, I was like, no, it's the next book I write. I need to write the book with the idea of self-publishing in mind. It can't be the second choice. It's going to be the first choice. And when I was doing all my research, that was when I sort of started to read about lit RPG. And a lot of the stuff that I'd written, even the YA hard-boiled crime, actually had a bunch of virtual reality stuff in it as well. So there was a lot of crossover there. And yeah, from there, I started just reading lit RPG, discovered it was like the genre for me, that it combined so many things that I liked. It was just sort of like, oh, I didn't realize people could write this way. In the same way that like, when I said I was at the bookstore and I was like, whoa, look at all these books. Beginning to look at the indie sphere was a similar thing. It was like, whoa, there's all these ways of telling stories and ways that defy maybe conventional writing rules and things that, we think are important. And I just couldn't stop reading it, and I loved it so much. And then, I started writing my my sort of spin on it, which was Arcane Kingdom Online: The Chosen. And and then from there, I think I sat on it. Like, I think I spent like 3 or 4 months editing it. It was like the longest I've spent editing it. But like I just wasn't in a rush, like it seemed like kind of slow. Whereas now with like my 14th book out, I feel a little bit like I constantly feel under the pressure to get the next book out. But and then I released it, and then it was like a home run. And like I think it hit 250 in the store. I think to date, if you combine like KU and audiobook and stuff, it's like I think at least 30,000 copies of that first book have been, sold or read, maybe higher, but and it was a dream come true. And then, I just kept moving forward from there. So that's sort of the origin story. I can keep going if you want to.
Absolutely. No, as in like, so after if you,
yeah.
So no, like honestly, as in like, how did you like pivot then from, because you'll have seen that, and I don't know if it was maybe apparent at the time, but a lot of the series nowadays go long form, and they go for quite a long period of time because of the web serial kind of maybe mindset, or if just like, the voracious readership of like, it makes sense to write books 4, 5, 6 in a series. Did you feel that same kind of pull with Arcane Kingdom Online, or was it that you were like, you know what, I'm going to close this off, this is done, and move on to the next thing?
I think so. I think with I don't know what I fully expected to happen with Arcane Kingdom Online. So that first book did amazing. And so I was like, okay, well, this book's done amazing. I guess I'm writing this forever now. And quickly, I think whatever magic, I think what happened was I was listening mostly to my instincts with that first book, and I think a lot of people dug it. And then you start getting the reviews coming in, and you start treating those reviews very seriously, which I think in some cases you shouldn't. And
Mm-hmm.
I would say the later books in the series, it kind of led astray because I think some of the fun stuff, I think so much lit RPG is the fun stuff of, being powerful or getting the cool abilities or leveling up faster than everyone else. But in my reviews of that first book, people were like, he's leveling up too fast. Screw this, blah, blah, blah. And I sort of then started reading more traditional craft books. And, suddenly the books, he's struggling a lot more. And you
Mm-hmm.
sort of lose that sense of fun a little bit. And so that series began to decline. And so and I felt also what happens for me, and so why I sort of stick to trying to write series. I think at the moment I think Tower Climber was 5, Second Chance Swordsman will probably be 5. I think I get better with each series, and you
Mm-hmm.
get better of ending a series with ending multiple series, right? And so I kind of feel like you're learning stuff all along the way of writing a book and writing a series that it's like in television, you see stuff like, season 10 of a show is no one normally goes, season 10 is when it gets really good. It's like, see,
Unless the writer strike ended around seasons 7, 8, and 9, and then
yeah,
it's like 10 fucking knocked it out of the park.
yeah,
The
fair
writers are
enough,
back.
maybe, yeah. Yeah, yeah, but like it, stuff starts to begin to fall apart, but you learn all this stuff while writing it. So for me, I really like the idea of going back to book 1 with all the knowledge you've gained from all the like that series
Mm.
that you've written, and then you can reapply it because book 1 you're sort of setting out the foundation for your series. And it seems like with each book 1 I write a better foundation.
Mm-hmm.
And so and then I just think about like because I see the success of the long-term serials, and I do think, oh, would I want to do something like that or tell a longer story? And maybe I do. I don't know, but I do worry about getting burnt out. And yeah, I
Yeah.
certainly don't want to write anything forever. You know what I
Mm-hmm.
mean? So, when I see Defiance of the Fall or He Who Fights with Monsters who have like these insane Patreons, I don't know because that it seems to me you'll fall into that position where you're like, I don't want to stop writing this story.
Yeah.
And that seems that I don't know if I like that. So I like the idea of being able to start something new, try new takes. And I think
Mm-hmm.
that's the great thing about lit RPG, right? It's like a meta genre. You can write a post-apocalyptic lit RPG, a tower lit RPG, a VR lit RPG, a fantasy lit RPG, a sci-fi lit RPG. It's endless. And I want to take advantage of that by writing more incarnations and more series.
So that's really interesting. And I want to delve into that last part you said there of like the many different iterations because it's like kind of lawless at the moment in like there's so many interpretations of the
Mm,
different genres. And you've a tower climber. If you were to kind of like, so you have VR with the first one, you have a
yeah.
tower climber with the second one, aptly named Tower Climber,
Yeah,
and
yeah, yeah.
then and Second Chance Swordsman, I'm going to say Regression.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So that's really cool. So like and they are very like different beasts.
Mm.
Like all three of those. So but obviously the same techniques are being applied and things like that with your learnings. However, is there a certain genre that interests you that you would like to write maybe in the future that you haven't, given much thought to? Or have given much thought to? I don't know.
Within lit RPG or within just like the broader universe of genres?
Well, I'd say with this one, let's stick with like lit RPG game lit for the moment. Are there any of the
Mm,
like specific themes? Like as you say, regression is really cool. I've just finished reading a deck builder one, a card system, and I was
yeah,
like, holy shit, this is cool.
yeah.
Um, so that's one that I have my eye on, but like I'm currently writing an academy story at the minute, and my first was VR.
Mm. So to
So
me, yeah, I love Academy. for sure. And I feel like almost feels like Academy almost feels kind of meta alongside lit RPG in a way. Like I don't think
Mhm.
Academy will go away because
Mhm.
school is like just such a good structure for things. And so like, right, like Iron Prince, right, is an
Mhm.
Academy story, but like set in space, right? Yeah, so I like Academy. I'd like to do more Academy. I'm reading Superpowers by Drew Hayes at the moment, which I'm
Yeah.
finding is absolutely phenomenal.
It is fantastic. Like I wanted to write something that would be like an entry point for people with lit RPG that would kind of maybe capitalize off the Hogwarts buzz. In that
Yeah.
it would be a case of like, if there were people that read fantasy that were curious about this, that this would be a very easy transition into that.
Mm,
So that's why I wrote Quest Academy the way I did. But it's only like month one of semester one as book one. And I'm like,
yeah.
my God, the pacing.
But that's the great thing. What's great about Academy is that you can have that day-to-day stuff, and it's what I'm loving about Superpowers.
Mhm.
And that is kind of like I like where the genre is going. And so like AKO, I probably wrote more as like kind of like Marvel movie structure, 3-act structure. Each book is
Yeah.
like its own individual hero's journey. And now I feel like I think with the advent of the web serials that the genre feels more like television, like or like manga, and it is that
Don't
serialized
you
nature.
dare compete with me, Harmon. Don't you dare compete with me. I will end you. I will not end you. I will make idle threats that I will not enforce. But damn you, Harmon Cooper.
Yeah, damn you, Harmon. And yeah, so I really like that. Like I really and I've been trying to implement that into my own work as well. Like not all of it, but having slice of life elements that sort
Hmm.
of like when you watch a show, even like Alias, let's say. I don't know. I'm trying to think of a show. Like, but you have the whatever plot, but then you have the subplots, the romance,
Hmm.
all the little other things. And that's what I really like, those like little slice of life moments. I don't want
Absolutely.
pure slice of life. I
Hmm.
want, you know, the characters I like to hang out with them as well. So um yeah, so Academy's cool. I know that I can see that farming stuff is getting,
Hmm.
farming and cozy lit RPG. I think I could be into that. I do like writing action and fighting and stuff, and so
Thank you,
taking that
Jay.
away taking that away feels like it could be an exciting challenge, but also makes me nervous. Um, and yeah, so farming seems like a big one on the horizon. Post-apocalyptic is another one that that's been big. I don't know if it's going to stay big. Uh, but then that sort of similar to Farmer, they're both ones that kind of make me nervous in the sense that I'm like, ooh, I like them, but I don't know if I'm the man for the job. So
That's it. So, the if you were to categorize your strengths, and this is where we put ego to like one side, or yeah, embrace your ego for this one, and just say like, if you were to say what are the components that you do well within your stories, as in
mm,
like for me personally, I think my characters are very very like strong in that the interactions, the dialogue sequences, the unique personalities of each individual, and how they riff against each other. That's one of the key things I do. Classist societies and rags to riches. Those are the main themes that I
mm,
typically go for.
yeah.
If you were to go with yourself, what about you?
Ooh, okay, yeah. So I think I definitely aspire to have and I think I'm getting better at it. But it's been a long journey. Yeah, like I really like characters are so important, and I want my characters to be lovable and likable and like your friends almost. Similar to superpowers, right? Or watching a sitcom, or yeah, like a very long running shonen anime. Um, that is what I want to do, and so I'd like to think I am getting better at it, and I really like my characters in Second Chance Swordsman. So, what I had a big learning moment because I'd say the best character in my second series, Tower Climber, was this character named Sakura, and I started to think, well, what made her such a good character compared to everyone else? And I realized it was kind of like because she had different relationships to different people, and you see them in those different ways make them a more interesting character. So she was very like a loving mentor who cared for the main character Max. She was also the sort of like queen president of their area, and so like the responsibility as a leader we saw her in that role. We also saw her in her home life. We knew that like she secretly loved romance novels and wanted to be a romance writer if she wasn't, a badass tower climber. And there was like another guy who had a crush on her, was interested in her, but she was always like pushing him away. And so you had all of these dynamics, and that was what made her so likable. And so with Second Chance Swordsman, oh, that's very nice of what Harmon just said. Jakob Tanner is writing incredible, simple prose that has a bunch of depth. So simple on the surface. Thank you very much. Yeah, and yeah, so what I did with Second Chance Swordsman is I literally started making charts to be like, how can more people connect? And it's really hard. And I still, sometimes you need a bit character, right? So you throw them in. But the more often you can say, okay, how do these people connect back to who we have already? So rather than there being just like a full squad in book 2 of Second Chance Swordsman, rather than it just being like a bunch of random dwarves show up, a bunch of random dwarves do show up, but one of those dwarves is actually brother to the one main dwarf character we know. So suddenly we have like a family dynamic and stuff. So I'd like to think that's like my growing strength is character.
Absolutely. Like,
and but then the other thing I was saying that I think that I'm getting better at as well is I really want to create the hype. I always think about that moment in Naruto. Have you seen Naruto?
Which one? Sorry, yeah, no, I've watched all of it up to Shippuden.
Rock Lee, the fight with
On
Rock
Gaara.
Lee and Gaara. So right where there's the moment where, if people don't know, Rock Lee, he's like fighting this guy named Gaara. Gaara's like the sand ninja. He's a total genius. And Rock Lee is sort of like the arbiter of like hard work. And, he can't do any ninja magic. He's just like trained so ridiculously hard that he's just like an amazing fighter. And it looks like he's losing. And then at one point, his mentor shuts down and says to him, Rock Lee, take off the weights. And he's like, okay. And he like takes off these weights off his legs. And everyone around it cuts to all these different points of view where they're like, oh yeah, what's a few weights gonna do? And he drops them and then they collapse on the ground and a freaking explosion goes off, right? Because, that's like the extent of the weights was like, thousands of pounds or something. And then I think in the show, like the heavy metal music comes on and then Rock Lee jumps down and starts fighting and it's crazy and it's epic and amazing. And, I would describe that as like, the hype moments. And I think I'm getting better at trying to deliver those consistently because those are some of my favorite moments.
It's so funny though for me, like, because the first story I wrote was Wild Cards over on Royal Road, and Wild Cards the Dread Pirate. And I had envisioned a scene that was the epitome of hype for me. And I was like, this is what I want to get to. And I couldn't figure out a way to make it, fun. I couldn't figure out where the stakes were or why people were watching it. So it was like, how are people watching this incredible thing happening in a maelstrom in the center of a fucking black lake, like Black Sea? And I was like, VR, it'll be VR. Okay, now we know. Now we have an audience watching it. But why do people care? Is it like, okay, so the protagonist has to have something. And that's how the whole story built towards that one moment. And that moment took me 3 months to write because it pretty much, the tempo went from that mission started at chapter 32 and finished at chapter 52.
Okay.
So 20 chapters, all it like building to that moment. And then it was like hype activate. And it's like, it was absolutely terrifying.
So this is interesting. Yeah. So this is like where it's like, how fast and frequently should you deliver the hype? Or how long should you take? These are active questions. Because I think of something like Cradle. I've not read all of Cradle, but I do think of that first book. Like the first like 30% is kind of like slow and you're kind of like, what? And then there's this insane moment in the middle of the book that completely changes everything. And, it's kind of incredible. and you know, that seemed like the equivalent of hype. And yeah, yeah, how do you decide to dole out those moments, you know?
So I recently fucked up.
Okay.
So I'm like, so you're 14 books in. I'm
Mm,
technically only 2 books in.
okay.
So Wildcards book 1, and then half of Wildcards was written before I needed a palate cleanser, and that was Quest Academy. Quest
Mm,
Academy book 1 was done, and then I started book 2 of Quest Academy, and it felt wrong. I was at, I think I was about 35,000 words in. Oh, sorry. So the Michael Head interview where he had a full Thanksgiving dinner in front of him and ate the whole thing while we were
oh, wow.
talking on the interview. Yeah. So Jay believes that that should happen on every single thing.
Oh my God, my mistake. I'm sorry. I mean, it is, to be fair, it is 9 PM here. So, or it's almost 10 now. So,
Same. Oh my
yeah,
God, same time zone, friends.
yeah, exactly. So we don't really like, I've eaten already. Because I am like definitely channel the spirit of an old man and like to eat very early. I like to eat at like 5 or 5:30, which seems kind of crazy, but
No,
yeah.
not at all. Lunch at
So
1, dinner at so
yeah.
it's cool. Um, but yeah, so with I screwed up when I was doing book 2 because I kept the same tempo from the ending of book 1 because I didn't stop between them. I went
Okay.
book 1 straight into book 2. And that high stakes tempo that is like at the end of the book, which is like, your resolution and stuff, I hadn't dipped back down. I had kept going on that kind of trajectory, and it didn't give the reader a break. It would have like that when they started the book, it'd be like, and I
Mm,
realized I was like, oh my God, my progression is completely way off.
yeah.
And that I was rushing when I should have been back to building. So the foundations were like, they had been set with book 1, and I was like planning the roof. And I was like,
Yeah.
no, 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 let's get right back down to it. And that even though the pacing did come back, the story is so much stronger for it, for how like I navigated it. And I know that pacing is one of my biggest issues because like 1 month for a book is like, I'm trying, it's going to be the semester 1 trilogy. And
Yeah.
that is hilarious to me.
But that,
But
but that to me is not necessarily bad pacing because it like to me it shows that you're able to see all the storytelling ability that can happen within that time period. So to me, it's not necessarily a pacing issue.
yeah.
I mean, it could be, but
Mm.
I don't think it is necessarily. Um,
Yeah. Like from the betas that read it, the beta readers, they were like, oh, it's good. And I was like,
and you,
cool, thank you.
if you're going at that speed, you're going at the exact pace that you want if you're writing a web serial that
Yeah.
could presumably go on for a very long time.
Yeah.
Um,
And chapter length is something that surprised me after Wildcards. Wildcards book 1, I had some chapters that were like 1900 words, and then some chapters that were 6,500 words.
okay,
And I was like, what is going on here? But then for Quest Academy, every single chapter fell within maybe 200-300 words of each other.
okay,
And they were all at 2,200 to maybe 2,500. Some like that needed it that little bit more went to 3,000 or something like that.
yeah,
But I kept, much more. And it just happened so much naturally. And all of them ended on a hook because
yeah.
of the Royal Road kind of mentality. Which I think is a key strength because it just reads page to page and you don't see the time going.
So here's a question: you just used the word hook rather than cliffhanger. Is there a difference?
Oh, so I think you need a hook to hang off a cliff. Like,
Okay,
otherwise, your hands will be very, very sore.
okay,
But
okay,
so as in, I don't have an English literature degree. I don't have much, theoretical knowledge on craft. I would say cliffhanger then would be the right one, but the hook is, at the very beginning to get them in, but
mm.
the cliffhanger would then be to kind of like get them to continue.
Because
Um,
well, I just because I found that I feel like cliffhangers. I mean, I could be wrong, but I feel like, and it's sort of, I felt this way when reading web serials, and what I like, I would never have thought of them as cliffhanger. Like for me, cliffhangers I think of in terms of thrillers and suspense.
mhm,
And so a lot of like, and then a monster came and it's gonna fucking kill them, and then
The
it's
end.
like, you know, that end of the chapter. But actually, especially in long running serials, that feels kind of tedious
Mhm.
and like a more interesting, right? Like, so the suspense cliffhanger, I feel like doesn't land as well. I mean, or I'm curious to hear what you think, but it's better to be more like, and then he leveled up and he couldn't believe what his new ability was. There you
So
go.
that is like, so that's the
Yeah.
way I write. I
Yeah.
write kind of like, you know, the kind of suspenseful continuation, as in like
Yeah.
that you want to know what happens next, but you haven't been deprived. You haven't
Yeah.
been left in a state of emotional distress. Like
Mm.
there were points where like I was explaining the end of Wildcards, and it was just at the penultimate moment that an author was like, and that's where you cut it. Like that's where the end is. And I was like, oh my god, they'd kill me. Like
Yeah.
that is the most unfair place to ever put the end.
Yeah.
So, and like the compromise there was like, I was like, okay, I won't show the rewards until
Yeah.
book two, but
Mm.
I won't like edge them to the point that they don't get to see the finale.
So
Um,
in terms, okay, so like I've been thinking in terms of hooks on just like ongoing chapters, like in the middle of the
oh
book.
yeah, sorry.
To the end of a book, so what I tried to do, um, and what I think I've been getting better at, and what I like, and this has been deeply inspired by One Piece, because the guy who writes that really ends his arcs very well. So I just have like I try and give a big sort of like dessert of ending. So like
Mhm.
every romantic subplot gets a little like highlight of where it's at, you know, any little things, any little callbacks. Like I'll give like 8 chapters of just like rejoicing and partying in the good times. And so that you
Mhm.
really get that catharsis that, wow, this has been satisfying. And then the last chapter is the punch in the face.
Yeah,
You know, and
it's the
that's
dessert, and then it's the bill.
yeah,
It's like,
exactly. It's like, yeah, here I've given you the happy ending. You could just not read the last chapter, you know, because then it's a satisfying, almost standalone book. But if you
yeah.
read the last chapter, well,
Yeah. And that's what you want to achieve with it. Like, so for me, like I just try to ensure that it ends at a point where they'll read the next chapter.
yeah,
For me. So like that's all it is that I want them to be left with just enough what to know what's happening next. Or it's like, oh, that the main character Salvatore Sal, he is like, oh, he can't wait to work on that, you know, he's a crafter, and it's just like,
mm,
oh, I no, I'm going to go towards the workshop. That's the last sentence, and they're like, oh
mm,
shit, he's going to the workshop, he's going to make something fucking cool. And
yeah,
then it's the next one, and they're just like, you know, oh, but like, you know, maybe I'll appraise it later at the end of the next chapter. And then
yeah,
it's just like, you know, and then just like, oh, it starts the appraisal, and his eyes widened, and they're like, oh fuck, what does it say? Okay, so next.
yeah, yeah,
and
yeah, yeah, yeah.
and yet you have those things where it's kind of like just the natural, you know, thing. But I wouldn't call them cliffhangers or hooks or stuff. But when I was doing it on Royal Road, it was a lot more. Like Quest Academy hasn't gone to Royal Road. It has only just been
Ooh,
written by me and then straight off to beta readers, and it'll be out in maybe a couple of months.
okay,
So
exciting.
it is exciting, but it just means that I don't have the level of feedback that I usually have. Um,
Yeah, because what I'd be really curious to know, because I'm not, you know, I don't know if I'll do Royal Road for like Second Chance Swordsman 3. Maybe for series 4, I might try
mhm,
and experiment just to see. Because it sounds like the cool analytics and stuff that you can get. So you can literally see chapters where people drop off.
mhm.
Uh, and so I'd be curious to know, do you know what was your experience? Did you see, oh, okay, people are dropping off there? Like, and what?
Absolutely, man. Like I when I was doing Royal Road with wild cards, I got to number 7. So it went all the way to the like through the whole thing, but I didn't have the normal way that other people did. I started the story, and then after 3 or 4 chapters, I got a review that was a 3 out of 5 that said has potential. See how it goes. And it was the first like review I had gotten, and it
Mm,
broke me. And I was like, I'm a 3-star author. That this is terrible. And like again, like I got over that, but a friend of mine, yeah, you know, she created a cover for me for Wild Cards,
mm,
and it was so good that I couldn't face telling her that I had stopped writing it because of a 3-star review. So
oh
I
no.
went back to it and continued the story. around chapter 7, a guy, said like, hey, this is what happens in 8, 9, and 10. And I was like, what? He literally predicted the next 3 chapters. And I was so angry that, like, first of all, I'm a 3-star author, and now someone has predicted my fucking story. My dad, am I such a basic bitch that I can't fucking write originally? And what happened was that I doubled down, and on my own side, I was like, nope, I am going to prove this fucker wrong. And I deviated. And I deviated away from the hero's journey.
Yeah.
And he was like, oh, I thought it was the hero's journey where he does this, this, and this. And I was like, oh, fuck. I was instinctively following the hero's journey. But I had doubled down into the world building side of things. So rather than him getting into the game in the first few chapters, character creation was chapter 18 of Wildcards.
There you go.
So, and what had happened was all of the reviews that started coming in, the comments were like, hey, like, this is so refreshing, of like the real world struggles or the dystopian, the hellscape, and the sponsorship deals and all of this stuff, before he even gets into the game. This is really cool.
Yeah.
And I was like, yeah, it is really cool, because my frustration with stories like Ready Player One and stuff like that, where that it's always like, or Viridian, not Viridian Gate, but was it Awaken Online, the Travis Bagwell, where it's like, we're in the game, we're in the game, we're in the game. And then, like, when they're not in the game, it's something completely unhinged to try and make that world interesting. So I wanted to have, like, no, real world stakes. Like, this is how I make stakes for VR. It's what happens to him in the real world in this futuristic hellscape.
Yeah.
So when I did that, I, at chapter 17, said, I don't care if this never gets popular. I've made my little community here and I'm happy. And it hit the trending list, which is now called Rising Stars, on chapter 18. And it exploded in popularity. But I can see all of the early chapter reviews. I can see every single day how many views each chapter has gotten. And I can tell what the read through is. That 5 people discovered, chapter 1 on one day. I'm like, okay, well, let's check the views for chapter 2 on that day. And then it's like, okay, it's another 5. Okay, we kept them. Now, there are user retention rates, but there's some like glitchy stuff there where it's like, if people are constantly checking back on the last updated chapter, it counts as a view in some instances. So there'll be some chapters that have like 24,000. Have a good one, Richard. Thanks for stopping by.
Yeah,
Richard. And you'd have some of my chapters would have 24,000 views. And you're like, that's not right, because the next one only has 18. And then the one after that has 23. And you're like, did people just skip that chapter? I find it much easier to go in and look at the read through through actual page views on certain days. And you can see the engagement of comments versus and follows and favorites and all of this. So it's really useful for the analytics side of things, but it's just like KDP, where you could end up losing so much of your time just poring over
for sure.
things. But it's very useful, especially with the premium account. It's really, really cool just seeing how it all kind of fits together and slots together. And you're able to see how people found you. So if you put up a thing on Reddit saying like, oh, hey, here's my story as an answer to someone's question, you can then go in and see the referral links to see which links led to the story on Royal Road.
Cool.
So you can see, oh, I actually got 3 or 4 from that one thing on Reddit. So it tells you that your engagement on Reddit is better than your engagement on Facebook, like in certain instances. Now, obviously, there's a lot. It really depends on a number of things, and you don't know the timings of it. But it's cool.
And it strikes me, though, my guess would be that the Reddit would be more popular with Royal Road. I could be wrong, but it seems like, just like from my lurking on the Reddit, it seems like they like the Royal Road stuff. Like it's like more. Yeah.
So when you look at the Humanity Fuck Yeah Reddits, those were the ones that had a lot of kind of progression fantasy stories. And so the likes of, I think it might be Mother of Learning and a few others, they actually got their start over on other platforms or like free posting platforms before they migrated to Royal Road, and they took a massive readership with them.
Oh, wow.
So you would have seen like the likes of the Mother of Learning back in the day had something like 11,000 followers, when all of the top performers underneath it in the Rising Stars would have been scraping 2,500, 3,000.
Wow.
Now you're seeing all of these ones coming across with like maybe 7, 8, 9, 10, 12,000 followers that aren't at the level of Mother of Learning, but that they have voracious readerships.
Yeah. Wow.
And that usually from communities maybe like Scribble Hub or Wattpad or other like that are then
Mm,
being like funneled through to Royal Road, which has a
mm.
nicer user interface and has a seamless integration with Patreon. So
Okay.
that is like they are kind of like they're going wide on the free to read kind of model.
Mm,
And they have like schedules for each of them, some that go Royal Road first. So that pushes people to the Royal Road one to boost their engagement
yeah.
before they get it for free on their other platforms like Reddit.
Yeah. Okay. Interesting. Um, yeah. It's crazy because
Yeah.
it just seems like, there's always new things happening and new angles and stuff, right? So like Royal Road was around when I started, but seemed to be it's actually it's kind of crazy. Like I remember when I first sort of entered the lit RPG scene, a lot of authors were saying Royal Road's dead. Like I wouldn't waste your time there. It's not where you want to be. And to be fair, at least in my case, it was right. I found, KDP and Amazon, and that worked out splendidly for me. So but they were wrong maybe about the state of Royal Road, or because it seems like it's a crucial thing in our ecosystem now.
Do you know how
Uh
it started?
I know vaguely, but I'm happy for you to tell me.
It's sorry, it's so the legendary Moonlight Sculptor
Mhm.
was a translated Korean web novel,
Yeah.
and it was VR MMORPG featuring weed, which was the name of the protagonist. And very, very good story, but like, really, really did well. And the translation website for that was called Royal Road, because
Mm,
based on the VR game inside of it was called Royal Road
mm.
in the actual story. So that's where Royal Road comes from.
Yeah.
And it had started out as like a fan site, all these like forums, communities, and everything like that. And it had evolved to take on fan fictions of, similar things, which then opened up to original stories. And then, sorry, Jay, got an appointment in a few minutes. I'm going to head out. Thanks so much for joining us, man. Appreciate seeing you
Oh,
here.
thank you so much, Jay.
But awesome. But yeah, so it essentially grew from there. And when I kind of like, I remember going to it and being like, Jesus, where's the forums?
Yeah.
And then just seeing all these stories, and I was like, holy shit, this is cool.
Yeah.
But it's a really cool community.
Yeah. And so here's yeah, so like you've written on Royal Road, and like isn't it like I've always heard I don't really read on there, but just that the reviews can be brutal and people are like it's just
They
insane.
they absolutely can be. So I can answer this in a few different ways. But
Mm,
like one of the things is that the majority of your readers will be silent.
yeah.
And you need to appreciate that in that they
Yeah.
are a silent majority. And then you have
Yes.
a number of people that are vocal, and then you have, a small subset of those that are negative.
Yeah.
So the people that are going to be sending comments being like, hey, you should change this, this is bullshit, without giving any sort of proper critique or anything like that. When you kind of curate your group to the point that, like, they're following the story, they will actually be the ones to respond, not you. So that when
Okay.
someone's like, this is shit, to be like, you'll get 10 comments underneath it being like, remove this comment, or like, you've been reported, like, this isn't fair. The author's doing his best, X, Y, and Z, like,
Oh,
you're
that's
not helpful at
beautiful.
all.
No one's talked about that. I've never heard anyone ever say anything like that about
You
Royal
can
Road,
go
and
to
that
any
is
of my
really nice.
chapters and you'll see it. So,
Yeah.
as in, like that, it is wonderful because you have this tight knit community that are, and they all play games to be who will be first to comment. And then,
Mm,
like, as long as you like go in and like reward them with rep and stuff like that, they're more enticed to come and the currency for awarding comments, like just tokens of sorts,
yeah.
all completely free.
Yeah.
So you're able to go in and award comments reputation that you enjoyed their comment or you found it useful or this and that.
Mm,
And that's a nice little, pat in the back for them. They're like, cool, I'm going to keep doing this. The other thing as well is engagement. A lot of people that go to Royal Road at this juncture already have their story completely written. So they are kind of like a take it or leave it kind of mentality of like, I'm here for just exposure rather than any of your engagement.
Yeah.
So what they end up doing is that like the people be like, hey, this doesn't make sense. And they're like, well, tough, as in like, here's the next chapter. Why aren't you reading it?
Yeah.
Whereas the authors like myself, that when I started out, I was like, oh, actually, that's brilliant. Thank you. I was just like, really appreciate that. Or I was trying to do it this way, but clearly that didn't work. I've changed it now. And
Mm.
you have people being like, what? This author listens. And the fact that they were surprised that I was engaging with them and listening to them showed like it kind of showed volumes of like as to how they'd been treated previously. Now, obviously, that's not for everyone, and that
Yeah.
might not actually been the case, but the curation of your community and actually engaging with them on like a regular basis and asking for advice, having a Discord and talking to them. Now, Wildcards has really fallen off the wagon while I focused on Quest Academy. But I still have messages over on Discord coming into me on the regular being like, hey, hope you're okay. You had a rough patch, during this and this. Just take care of yourself. And it's the most wonderful community. And
Yeah.
really, really
That's
good.
really nice.
It is. And it's nice because a lot of these people are kind of like investing in your journey rather than the finished product. So a
Okay.
lot of the people that will have remembered certain instances or certain things that had been changed, it's more exciting for them when they see the finished product and they're like, my advice got that thing changed to this. Or
Yeah.
like, he named that character after me. I was here when he was on chapter 2. And now it's like, all of this stuff is happening. I had been told by everyone, like, it's going to happen. You're going to hit trending at any moment. And I was like, doesn't matter if I don't. And then I
Yeah.
hit trending because they knew what they were talking about. Those readers know that platform inside and out.
Yeah.
And overlooking them or having a form of arrogance that it's like, hey, I'm the author here, like, back off.
Yeah.
That doesn't win you anything over there. There is one other thing I'll talk about, and it came up in the interview with JD Glasscock 2 weeks ago, of how, like, when authors go up, they put up their story and then they take it down to put it over on Amazon. There have been a few instances where authors have done it almost kind of like a bait and switch, in which the story doesn't even end on Royal Road, and then it's taken down for
Yeah.
edits and then sent off to Amazon, and then they get 1 starred to oblivion, or like 0.5 stars. And
Yeah.
the author, the readers are like naturally upset because it's like, hey, like, you took this away. I was invested. As in, like,
Yeah.
people are like, hey, you got it for free. It's like, no, but they invested their time.
Yeah.
That they invested their time in giving your story a chance, and you rewarded them by taking it away.
Yeah.
And that leaves a very negative impression. So a lot of authors that I've seen that have done that model, or like, yeah, but it was ready for edits. Like, so I gave them a week's notice. Whereas some people are on a very different, you can see from the page views, some people don't read it until 2 or 3 weeks later. I have people that are reading chapter 52 of Wildcards 3 months after it's been out.
Yeah.
And
Interesting.
so, and they're not, and those numbers aren't reflected in the early numbers. So that they were somewhere in the story and they were coming back to finish it. So,
Yeah.
so that kind of grace of 1 or 2 weeks is only for your own kind of like, oh no, I did my best. It's
Yeah.
a
Interesting.
So again, and that's the sort of kind of thing I mean by it. But again, it's really, really useful to kind of build up that kind of audience. And there is quite a lot of strong representation there, is that people will literally, like, I have people in Germany, in China, like all these people on my Discords, like a 13-year-old kid from China was like, like, he's I love your story, and he's just in there policing people's language on the Discord, being like, it's like,
Yeah.
no, there are children here, and I'm like, why are you here?
Yeah. Yeah.
People die in that story.
That is
So,
so
like,
cool. Yeah. Yeah.
but yeah,
Yeah. Actually, you reminded me that I got a very lovely email from a young man this week who was 15, and I was like, oh, I got to write back to him, and I definitely got to do that because so thank you for reminding me of the younger fans.
yeah, and they're great, and it's just so lovely and wholesome. Because there are so many people that are like, some of the Royal Road readers were like, let me know when Quest Academy releases. I'm like, you haven't even read it. It was like, yeah, but you wrote it. I'll support it. And
Yeah.
that's lovely. And
Mm.
like, that's the sort of fans that you kind of like, you really want to curate and have. It's just like there's so many wonderful people in this community, and
Yeah.
Royal Road has a lot of them that a lot of people are needlessly avoiding.
Yeah, that's so nice. I mean, the other thing that I think about is that there is something really enjoyable to be like reading or watching something week to week. So with like the
Hmm.
Netflix model, we really got used to like binge watching TV shows.
Yeah.
I've been watching Succession, the final season, which is not quite, I don't know how much overlap there is between, like I don't know, Succession feels very far away from lit RPG, but
Not for me. The way I wrote wildcards is a lot of the sponsorship deals or the S class tiers are like the ultra elites, the Logan Roys of this world.
Well, there you go. Very well put. But it's very enjoyable to be watching it week to week and then like listening to podcasts about people speculating about where the show might be going and like being a part of the process of it and like really savoring it and being a part of a community of people watching it. And yeah, there's something quite nice about that. And I think, Royal Road is definitely, and the web serials in general are like tapping into that, it seems like.
Absolutely. Like you'll see some chapters will get over 100 comments.
Yeah.
And that's like, would you have gotten those 100 comments if you released the whole thing? No,
Yeah.
because you'd literally have like people rushing to the next one. So
Yeah.
it's and you see that sometimes with rapid releases of stories where people will just like, if it's too quick between releases, they'll just leapfrog the second book, go straight to the third and review that one. So book two will have a lower number of reviews because there
Mm,
was no kind of like time for them to just kind of savor and appreciate.
yeah.
Um, sorry, that feels wrong. It's kind of like, it depends. Like if you were to have like an 8-course meal and with a bit of time in between them, you're going to be like, wow, let's talk about that. That was fantastic, rather than just gorging yourself on just one giant fucking
Yeah.
like dish.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And then be like, I am full.
Yeah. 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 Yeah, and so but then on the flip side, because like like I'm a big manga reader, but I do read in the volumes, and
Mhm.
so like slowly working my way through One Piece. I'm like at volume 80 now, out of like
The
over
art style
100.
annoys me so much. The elongated kind of the batshit art style gets me.
It's wild, but so I'll read like a whole arc, right, which will be like 5 to 10 volumes normally, uh, and I'll read it in like a week or two. These arcs, because they're being released weekly, are like anywhere from like 2 to 4 years of storytelling, you know.
Oh, I know. I was up to date
Eh,
with Bleach. Like every week, I would sit down and read Bleach. I'd sit down and read Naruto. I would sit down and read like all of
Yeah,
them. So,
but
like,
I worry what like it's particularly with One Piece. I'm loving reading. Like I treat each arc like its own novel, and that's what I
mhm.
read. Whereas I go, oh man, like so I'm approaching an arc called or like it's still far away called Wano, but I think it's like a 16 volume arc or something, right? So
Wow.
that's like a lot of, and like so, and you're like, ooh, would that have been hard to read week by week? I don't know, but like you're just like, ooh,
The answer is yes, because manga edges you.
yeah,
Because that is the one where it's literally that like there's only a few pages, and Bleach was the biggest bastard for this
yeah, yeah,
because you would have like certain fight scenes where it was just these really wide sweeping arcs or like this like long like black like huge like fucking sheets of black, and then like fuck all dialogue, and it's yeah, and then
yeah,
it's like, oh, come back next week where all of this makes sense. And you're like, fuck. Like even Dragon Ball.
yeah,
Dragon
yeah,
Ball episodes, you're like, my God, nothing's happening.
yeah, yeah,
Imagine reading the manga.
yeah, 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 exactly.
but
Yeah.
uh but no, it's sorry, so I should at some point probably read Second Chance Swordsman.
Oh
Um
yes,
so
please.
while I'm looking this up, and I'll give you a few page reads. But this is do you want to maybe introduce Second Chance Swordsman, as in now that you finished book two, you probably have a much better like insight as to how the story's progressing and stuff. But for book one, for people that maybe haven't given it a go yet or haven't tried it before, give us a kind of intro to the series.
Okay, yeah. Second Chance Swordsman is a regression lit RPG, or you could say like a time travel story. The elevator pitch I have when I'm out and about during my life is that it's Lord of the Rings meets Back to the Future, and so I was really inspired by books like Reborn Apocalypse and Towers of Heaven, and a Chinese web novel called Tales of Demons and Gods that all had this trope of what if, some at some point in the future our hero or the world dies and then our hero goes back in time, and they go back in time, and now they have a second chance to stop the bad thing from happening. But unlike time travel stories that I was used to, like Back to the Future, there was no loop. You didn't get to continuously travel back in time. No, you've been gone back in time, and now you can change things, but that's it. And so, and I found, I don't know, the dramatic stakes of that setup so delicious. And I set out to write my own, and I had noticed that most of these books were like set as tower climbers, actually, which is kind of ironic that my tower climber didn't have that, or post apocalyptic stories. So I figured, ooh, okay, well, what if I took that sort of premise or idea and set it in a more high fantasy, Lord of the Rings, Tolkien esque kind of world, and what would that look like? And and then that led to Second Chance Swordsman.
Amazing. It's I just looked it up, and like even book one is like #1 bestseller in steampunk fantasy.
Is it
Yeah,
really?
as in like on the US store.
Yeah,
Uh,
let me look it up myself. Oh shit! Yeah, that happened while we were talking because I'm in the middle of a launch, so I am like just clicking refresh as you do constantly.
oh, but thanks, Jez.
Yeah, thanks,
Jesus, he just
Jez.
pops up. But no, as in like I have to say the release looks absolutely phenomenal. As in like
Mm.
you topped lit RPG and game lit. New genre, well done.
Yeah, very exciting. And because I was very worried. I think when the category came about, I think Dimmy could attest to this. I sent him messages being like, "The category is going to be too competitive. I don't like it. Everyone seems hyped about it, but I don't like it because I don't think it's going to help anyone. It's just going to be too competitive." And
Oh,
so, yeah.
oh no, like I have to release my first ever book. And this is going to be, and like you just know that category, it's going to be the next in Dungeon Crawler Carl is going to be like holding that spot for a year or something.
Exactly. Exactly. So,
And yeah,
yeah. If you can grab it for a moment, that's cool. I'm happy
yeah,
that there are other categories as well.
yeah. No, I think my categories probably be like superhero science fiction and superhero fantasy ebook.
So
Um,
I didn't request superhero, but they put Second Chance Swordsman 2 in superhero. And the one negative-ish review I've gotten for Second Chance Swordsman 2, which is a 3-star, so pretty good. He said at the end, not superhero fiction. And I was just like, all right, man, like the algorithm put me there.
I'm sorry. I just like I would have put in myself in Italian gourmet cookbooks, but like and just top that. But no,
Yeah.
but no. So anyway, pray for Brian on his release.
Yeah. When is the release happening?
I don't know yet, so we'll wait and see until like so. Jazz. So I'm doing it through Legion, so it'll be
Yeah.
like
Very
there's a few
exciting.
provisional dates, but like few things need to align beforehand. But it could be maybe at some point in July. I don't know.
Okay.
So let's see how it goes. I just need to write book 2. No pressure.
Very exciting. I you brought up book 2 earlier. I actually think, like, if you are thinking, I don't know entirely if web serial writers think in terms of books, but like
Mhm.
I find that actually book 2 is always the hardest because book 1 you have the freedom to explain the world and stuff.
Yeah.
Whereas then book 2 is like you're sort of figuring out what is the template that's going to make sense for all books going forward. Like, what is the Second Chance Swordsman book going to be? And that is where, it
And do you have
takes.
any advice for that? Because I have a bit of a mental block with this because I never finished Wildcards book 2 because I moved
Mm,
on to Quest Academy and now I'm on Quest Academy book 2 and I'm like, what if I'm cursed? What if
Well,
I can never get past?
I think you were already on the right track thinking about, and I've made this mistake too, where you were talking about how if you move, like you have to slow back down again.
Yeah.
And so the mistake where I made that was in Tower Climber 5, which was the final book of that. And I just started with like, all right, like a lot of stuff needs to happen. This is the last book. Let's go. And I think people, criticize it for being too fast or rushed. And I've sort of tried to reflect why that is. And so what I keep looking back to is Avengers Endgame. And that it was, they spent an hour of just like hanging out from the consequences of the first book, not in a rush.
Yeah.
And I think that's crucial with every book, right? So I think that's the way to think about it. It's like, how do we, because I don't think lit RPG readers, they don't mind things being a little bit slow. I don't like, it doesn't need to be high stakes action craziness. And it's just sort of figure out how you can slow it down so you can then start ramping up to that hype. I think that's probably it. And it seems like you were figuring that out on your own anyway. So
Yeah, no, it's a writer's intuition. Just
yeah,
takes fucking time.
yeah.
So, but look, I have the chapter open now, so I will. I'm going to be starting Second Chance Swordsman, a lit RPG adventure, book 1. Sam stood on the front lines of the final army, the soldiers beside him shivering with fear. Their shoulders trembled, their teeth chattered. Sam closed his eyes and let out a sigh. He wanted to fight his nerves, be calm. It was tough to stay composed in the face of death. Sam continued to stand tall and proud, keeping his sword clutched in one hand, staring out across the battlefield. At the far end, the Demon King and his horde were streaming out of a huge portal of darkness. It was the biggest black gate any of the soldiers in the final army had ever seen. The howling wind echoed across the battlefield, mixing in with the hiss and growls of the monstrous horde growing in front of them. "We're all going to die," said the soldier beside Sam. He started muttering it over and over again. "We're all going to die. We're all going..." Sam clutched the man's shoulder with one hand and cupped the man's mouth with the other. The soldier's eyes widened, freaking out even more. "We're not going to die," said Sam. "Humanity has formed the greatest army ever known in the entire history of Westria. We will not die in the face of this threat." The soldier had stopped shaking, but Sam was still worried the man might start wailing as soon as he removed his hand from his mouth. "Look," said Sam, "I'm going to remove my hand, but I don't want you to start screaming. I'm going to give you something to help with the nerves. It's called brightweed. The elves use it to take it before battle to keep them calm and focused." Sam let go of the man's shoulders and then materialized some leaves from his inventory. He then slowly let go of the man's mouth and handed them to him. The man took the leaves and put them in his mouth and began to chew. His face grew noticeably calmer as he ate the leaves. He nodded at Sam in gratitude. Of course, Sam knew the leaves weren't actually real brightweed, but the placebo effect was enough to calm the soldier down. He figured if given the option, it would be better to die with the knowledge that you fought brave and valiantly than to die cowering in fear. Sam knew it as one of his parting gifts to the soldier beside him, one last act of secret kindness. For in Sam's mind, he had little doubt that their destruction and loss was near inevitable. Yet it was the hope that a miracle could still happen that kept him going. A huge horn could suddenly be heard echoing across the battlefield. That's the signal, Sam thought. He straightened and got ready for the battle ahead. The general at the center of the army shouted, "Charge!" Sam pushed his boots off against the black sand and began running forward. The sound of battle cries and rushing feet echoed all around him. The demon horde hissed and wailed and then galloped towards them. The two armies were going to meet in the middle. Leading the front line of the demon horde was a creature called a demonling, a ghastly crimson monster with a mouth composed of tiny razor-sharp teeth that could rip through armor and flesh with ease. One demonling rushed ahead and leaped right towards Sam, mouth wide open. The monster was fully prepared to dig into Sam and rip his head completely off from his neck. Sam swung the blade faster than the demonling could move, slicing the monster cleanly in half. The ichor and ooze of the dead demon splashed onto his face, and Sam had to take a second to wipe it off. More demonlings came his way, and he made quick work of them. All around him, the front line human soldiers were pushing back the demon's army's first wave. Demonling hisses were quickly turning into whimpers. The echoes of their galloping feet were turning into the sounds of their bodies smacking against the ground dead. Adrenaline surged through Sam as the primal need for survival took over and he entered a state of battle frenzy. His heart pounded against his chest, his throat burned. Maybe, he began to think, maybe we can actually win this thing. Sam continued to move forward, slashing his sword and ripping through the horde of demonlings with ease. If we can keep pushing forward, Sam thought, maybe we can get close enough to the Demon King, and if we can slay him. Sam's hopeful thoughts were short-lived as higher-level demon soldiers showed up in the second wave of the demon horde's attack. Demon soldiers were warriors composed of deep red flesh and fought with mutated arms that functioned like swords or battle axes. They fought with greater sentience and strategy than the bloodlusting demonlings. Sam rushed forward, ducking a demon soldier's swing of a battle axe, and then jumped up and sliced the demon warrior's head right off. He wasted no time heading towards his next enemy. There was no time to pause, no time to assess which way the battle was going. Any hesitation meant instant death. He could hear in the background the groans and screams of his fellow human soldiers. Unlike the demonlings, the demon soldiers were definitely putting up a stronger fight against them. Sam sliced through another group of demon soldiers, only to find a massive shadow looming over him. He looked up. His eyes widened. It was a demon giant, a colossal monster with massive fists and arms, with sharp protruding bones. Sam jumped backwards away from it. The demon giant swung its arms, killing a dozen human soldiers with utter ease. First from the sheer strength and the power of its blow, and if that weren't enough to kill the human warriors in front of it, the sharp bones along its arms finished the job, stabbing the humans all over. Sam gasped at the sight of the sheer destruction. The demon giant wasn't even one of the Demon King's strongest soldiers, and yet they were taking out some of humanity's best. Sam took a step backwards, only to knock into something. He realized before even looking up that he'd been so awestruck by the demon giant that he'd lost focus, and losing focus meant. Suddenly, looming over him was another demon giant. Sam had no time to react. The demon giant swung its fist right into Sam's side, sending him hurling high up in the air. Sam didn't notice that he was flying above two clashing armies, as the pain from the attack was so intense it overtook his entire sense of being. Seconds later, he crashed into the ground, countless bones in his body snapping and breaking upon impact. His whole body ached and throbbed with the greatest amount of pain he'd ever felt in his entire life up until that point. He couldn't quite understand why he hadn't died immediately upon impact. Looking around, he realized he'd landed not quite on the ground of the battlefield, but upon a pile of dead human soldiers. Their bodies had cushioned his fall. Sam's vision began to wobble. He could see blood leaking out of his body from different points. So this is it, he thought. He rolled over and watched as the demon giants plowed through the human army. It was the greatest human army ever created in the history of Westria, and here it was being demolished within minutes. Sam realized that they never stood a fighting chance against the Demon King and his horde. A swell of anger filled Sam's dying body. It's our own fault, he thought with bitterness. If humanity had spent more time preparing, maybe things would have gone differently. If the elves were still with them, or even the dwarves, maybe then, Sam thought wistfully. But even then, who could really say? The clouds above were grey and full of ash. A sea of dead bodies lay everywhere. The demons had won. Sam felt his vision begin to close in on him. He was being enveloped in the darkness of death. But he was about to take his last breaths of life. Something strange happened. A bright light emerged in the clouds above him. Huh? The bright light got closer and closer, filling Sam with a sense of warmth. Is someone casting a massive heal spell? Answering Sam's thoughts as if he had spoken them, the light spoke out. You have been chosen, young knight. Who is this? Sam thought deliriously. I am the last living goddess of this world, said the light. I will die along with the rest of Westria, never to return. I have enough power, however, to send you back. Send me back? Back where? Will you be there? The goddess paused for a second, sadness filling her voice. I will not be there, no. I don't have enough energy or power to explain anymore. Just trust me. You're the only one capable of doing this. Good luck. And with that, everything went black. So, that is chapter 1. West, like there were so many like tongue twisters in there for me, the demonlings.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah, yeah.
but no, that was really, really good. And
Yeah.
it's but it's look, it reads super smooth, man. Like it's just like, it's no nonsense, no like, it reads easy and you
Mm.
know exactly what's happening. It's quite good and still quite descriptive. So I now understand what Harmon was talking about. The Jakob Talent is writing incredibly simple prose that has a bunch of depth. So
Well,
it's
that's very nice, and you read it very well, and it was very fun because I've not actually gone back and read the first chapter in a while, and yeah, you read it really good. I think if you don't want to write, you could have a career in audiobook narrating.
I saw the charge in all caps and I was like, charge.
Yeah, I was like, oh, yeah, I saw the all caps, and I was like, oh, how's it? Like, I don't know, what's he gonna do? And I was like, yeah, I thought you did it great.
but
Uh,
um but yeah, no, look, it's exciting and delighted that book 2 is releasing well. So congratulations on that. What are you kind of like? Are you just going to be in the throes of anxiety for the next few weeks, months, or are you throwing yourself into book 3?
So, yes, I'm so happy that people are reading the book. Book 2 is now out. For anyone watching and curious and doesn't know that it's out, it's out. So you go check it out. But yeah, this has been the longest I've gone between releases. So this book took about 8 months.
Hmm,
It's also like double the size, like it's 170,000 words. So it's my longest book to date. Uh,
fantastic.
but so far it looks like everyone's coming, people are coming to read it. So that's really reassuring because it's always quite nerve-wracking from a launch, but the longer you go before one, the more nerve-wracking it is. I was fortunate that I finished the book about 2 weeks before the editor was meant to get it. So I ended up spending those 2 weeks doing a lot of like outlining for the next book. So I've begun doing that. I might do a little bit of work on book 3 this week, but I'm taking some advice from that Michael Chatfield gave me, which is when you finish a book, go on vacation for 2 weeks because you need that break. If you don't, if you're just like, oh, I wrote a book, now I'll go write another book, that's when your brain and body starts going, screw you, man. Like I don't want to do what you say. So I'm running, just mostly overseeing that the launch is going well, doing stuff like this. And but come this coming Saturday, I'm actually going to fly out to Portugal for 10 days. And so,
Amazing.
yeah, so I'm looking forward to doing that. And it'll be my first proper holiday in years because, I go back home to Canada to see my family. That's not quite a holiday. And, going to Vegas for like conferences or Madrid for conferences, while cool and exciting, also isn't the same as a holiday either. So
Absolutely.
I'm really looking forward to going on an actual vacation for just relaxing purposes. So, and hopefully, when I come back from that, I'll come back stronger, like a meditating cultivator, and I'll be able to get book 3 going really well. And that's what I'm hoping will be the lifestyle going forward, so that you know uh, I'll go on holiday when I finish a book, and that requires you to then give yourself stronger deadlines, harder deadlines, because you need to book those things. Uh, and then it lets
Absolutely.
you be excited for those things, and also push you to, not mess around. So yeah, that's what's going on.
So, what does the future look like for you when, like, so that's the immediate future, and that's really good. And you're putting in,
Mm.
like, strong boundaries, which are very good, especially like Chatfield's advice on the holidays is integral because it's the best method of staving off the burnout because
Yeah.
it will eventually happen, especially if you start to come to resent it, which is like
Mm.
you never want that because all of this is works of passion. Um, but I suppose the curiosity of the future plan would be is in like, what does like, success look for you in the next number of years? Like as in, is this a case of just like continuing to write great books, but you hoping to buy a house in London? you hoping to, just what are you hoping to
Oh,
do?
oh yeah, okay. That is exciting. Yeah. I think in terms of like the writing and the books, it's all going so well, and I'm so grateful for everything. So, I really want to make sure like I don't know, like I count my blessings and that I'm like appreciative to what it is. And if it
Mhm.
stays as it is, it's freaking amazing. So, and if you don't want to expand too fast or anything like that. And
Absolutely.
so yeah. So yeah, for me on the writing front, it's like I want to in the next year or two, I'll finish Second Chance Swordsman.
Mhm.
Then I'll start the next series, and yeah, then hopefully, right, that'll be probably 1 to 2 years, and then start another series, and yeah, just keep going and keep. And I think that's the thing that keeps going me is that I like getting better at my craft and better at telling my stories, and so um, it's really nice. I think starting around Tower Climb, more in Tower Climber and more so in Second Chance Swordsman. I'll read like because I don't read it over as I write, so I like
Mhm.
only read it once I've done the book. And so I've like some of those chapters are stuff I wrote like 3 months, 4 months earlier that I've forgotten about. And I go, oh wow, like this is exactly what I want in a book. And that's so like satisfying. So yeah, to keep doing that. I'm also working on building a community around
Mhm.
my book, Knights of the Tannerverse, as you can see on this
Excellent.
TV here. And that's been really cool. And so I would like to keep doing that and getting more people involved. And that's precisely why I am intrigued by the Royal Road Patreon model
Mhm.
because it gives you content to talk about on a weekly basis. Like, right? Like I've had 8 months where I share pictures of what I'm up to, but like, the book's not out. And so I feel like that would strengthen the people, around me, the readers, and give them something to talk about. So I think that would be kind of cool. So that's something I'm toying in my head. But yeah, generally just keep writing. Uh, but yeah, but on a larger level, yeah, I would love it's a hard thing, to say that, like, and I'm definitely not there yet, but yeah, if I could buy property in London, that would be great. I'd love a house. I live in
Yeah.
Southeast London, and so there's, neighborhoods around here I'd love to live in, and yeah, and maybe I'll get there eventually. Yeah, but we'll see. And but yeah, that would be nice. And but yeah, I'm like yeah, I don't know if I've been thinking. I've been thinking less on those 10-year plans a little
Oh
bit.
no, again, like it's
No, but it's
so
an interesting question, but I think they're good. But I think like I don't know, at least the vibe I've been on recently is like I don't know, like embracing uncertainty, and that,
mm,
well, like yes, I do want to keep working hard and like, if I can get the house in London, that sounds great. But, thinking about that now, it just adds pressure to it, so it's sort of like, you know what?
completely.
Let's just, we'll take it one day at a time, and if that one day at a time and walking into the uncertain abyss eventually
Mhm.
leads to a house in London, that would be really fucking great. But yeah, I don't know. Uh
Yeah.
I don't know. How about you? What is over the next few
So
years, what does success look like to you? I think the fact that I'm doing this as a full-time job, I think that's always what I wanted to do. So I feel like it's been a success ever since that happened. So yeah.
So for me, I worked in a job that I didn't particularly enjoy for a number of years.
Mm,
So I was doing that, like, and not a particular employer or anything like that. It's just that I didn't feel the fulfillment from recruitment as I do with writing.
mm,
So helping people, being a subject matter expert, and like, guiding people and getting them their dream job, that was something that I used to absolutely love.
mm.
And I still do enjoy it, but again, it's the writing is the creating worlds for people to escape into, and just having people like enter them and like tell me what they think. I love that.
Yeah.
So, but with writing and recruitment, with recruitment for all those years, I was able to eventually buy my own house. Now that was just like so. So I have a mortgage on this place. It's 3 bedroom. It's nice. It's lovely. And once I got that, it was like a weight had been lifted off my shoulders. in that I
Mm,
knew that I had a mortgage payment of, I think it was something like 700 or 800 euro every month for the next 30 years. So that
yeah,
I know that this house is mine and that I have a base of operations. And
yeah,
that the uncertainty and the fear that I had, which I didn't embrace at the time, for the years prior, was that I was like, I will never, if I want to be a writer, I'll never be able to afford a house. I'd never be able to provide for any future family
mm,
or any sort of things like this. But now that I have the house, I was like, now I can follow my dreams. And
amazing.
it was, and that was amazing. And I'm taking steps towards that, and I'd love to be able to do that properly. And by that I mean is like, just from going off to Lake Garda with Chatfield and Nathan, Darla, and it's that was wonderful because I was like, why can't I have this all the time? Why
Yeah,
can't I'd love to be in a position where, like, where if Jacob says, hey, we're going to Portugal, or hey, we're going to, London, do you want to come? I can just say yes without thinking about it. That I don't have to worry about the days off, the this, the that, the
mm,
everything like that, that I just have the money in reserve, that I can do the things that make me happy.
yeah. I mean, that sounds amazing. I mean, well, it's interesting because Michael invited me to the Garda trip, and
Mhm.
so
I've been finding out that I'm so low on that pecking order of people invited, where I was saying like, "Oh, guess who invited me?" It's just like, "Oh yeah, we would have loved to have gone." I'm like, "Bitch, when the fuck were you invited?" And
yeah.
then it's like literally this
I
whole
don't
list of like 50 people that
know.
everyone
I
I
don't
talked to was
know.
like, "Yeah, I couldn't make it." I'm like, "Was I last on the fucking list?" I'm
No, I
okay with
think
it.
you're high tier. You're a high tier invite, but what I was thinking was that, like, because you're talking like the freedom to do it, and at least for me, I mean, and this is where I feel like the Patreon again model could be really delicious. If you're
Mhm,
releasing 3 chapters a week, they're 2,000 words each. That's 6,000 words a week. On my good weeks, I'm writing more than that. So
mhm.
you can really have that backlog, and then you can then have the freedom to do that. At the moment, I just feel like I'm still chasing releases. And so um I got that invite from Chatfield and I was like, I gotta finish this book,
Absolutely.
So um but yeah, I think yeah, but I know what you mean. Being able to just but then at the same time, I had the freedom to choose whether I wanted to do, which a lot of people like
Absolutely.
is a zero choice. So, um, yeah,
But like one of the things as well is that like the heads invited me out to Kansas to be like, oh, you just come here for like a month. And I was just like, what?
yeah,
And like there's things where I'm like, no, I have responsibilities of this, of that, or like all these different things. But um it'd be lovely to just be at a point in time where I can actually just make decisions to go and do things, or that if I was to buy a second property and stuff like that, use this house as equity or something, and then
yeah,
I have an additional revenue stream from rental income.
that
And
would be
then that
amazing.
just means that if I'm going without a wage from writing for a few months, if I do hit burnout and it happens for a year or something like that, that the bills are still paid and that I'm in
Yeah,
a comfortable position. So diversification of portfolio and just making sure that things work out. But again, it's like just being able to kind of do the thing that I love for as long as possible would just make me really happy. So
mm,
that's kind of like it. But the I'm not sure if you would have seen. Did you come across Becca Syme in any of the stuff? So she's a coach for the Clifton Strengths,
yeah.
and the Clifton Strengths is I did it, and so one of my top five is futuristic. So I'm
It's
constantly
my
looking
number
into the
6.
future.
It's
Ah,
my number
so
6. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
excellent. So no, I'm constantly looking at the future and being like, how can this work? How can that work? And stuff like that. What's your number one out of curiosity?
Ooh, my number 1 is intellection,
Interesting.
which
So I'm
isn't
strategic.
intellection is not like, oh, like they say it straight away, which kind of makes you feel bad because you're like, intellection, I guess, because I'm a pretty smart guy. And they're like straight away when you read what it is, they're like, that's not what it means. It doesn't mean that you're a smart guy. It just means that you like think a lot. You just like sit around and think. You like the process of thinking.
It's like, no, you're actually a dumbass because you have to think about things more, and
Yeah,
you're
yeah,
like,
yeah, yeah. It's just like,
and I enjoy
yeah.
it.
But yeah, so like my top 5 were something like intellection, learner, input, communication, positivity. Yeah.
Yeah. Oof. What am I? I think I am. I know strategic is number one. Communication. So let's see. Yeah, strategic is number one. Futuristic is number two. Communication is three. Individualization is four, and number five is empathy.
Whoa. What's individualization?
That I'm able to pretty much look at each individual person and the strengths that they have and how they can be best, kind of combined into teams, as in like,
Oh,
or
that's
how,
cool.
like, or just like, being able to find something interesting in each individual person, or yeah,
That's really
individuality of a
nice.
human. So,
That's a
you
very
know,
nice strength to have. That's very cool.
yeah, helps with interviewing.
Yeah.
um, but yeah, I guess usually around this time of the call, what we do is that we have a chat about like things you're reading or things you're enjoying at the minute. So, is there
Mm.
any sort of like maybe shout outs you'd like to do for either other underrepresented authors or just things you're enjoying at the minute?
Ooh, okay. So in terms of, I don't know, I read very slowly and I'm like very much on my own thing. So like, yeah, right now I'm just working my way through um Superpowers by Drew Hayes, and
Yeah.
I just love it so much. And I guess what I love about it is I feel like Drew Hayes is writing in a way where I kind of want my writing to eventually get to. And I feel like he's using a similar move set, uh third person past tense, POV switches, um and just like really amazing character work and like good character drama and romantic subplots and all that kind of stuff. And I can't, like, it's just so good. And yeah, like, yeah, and I just really like it. So it's a big, big recommend for me. And it's been a pleasure to be reading through so far. Um, I'm then working through Succession season 4, which
Excellent.
I'm
I'm
really
only on
enjoying.
season three. Only on season
Okay,
three.
really enjoying watching it week to week. It's been quite amazing. And then I'm also watching the final season of Marvelous Mrs. Maisel, uh,
Wonderful.
which is,
Did you know that Daniel Wisniewski was in that in the Catskills episodes?
was he?
Yeah. So I
Wow,
think he's one of the either the singers or he's one of the Catskills people. Like, so I just found that incredible.
that's
So
amazing.
I think Rebecca Woods was also in the Catskills episodes. So like,
Oh,
yeah.
have you watched the show?
First two seasons.
Okay,
Whatever point it was that, sorry for spoilers for anyone in the community, but when she left Zachary Levi's doctor character for fucking Joel again, I was like,
yeah.
oh no. I tapped out because I hate Joel.
Okay, see, because I thought the show's done a good job because I hated Joel in the first season.
Yeah.
And then I feel like the subsequent seasons have done such a good job of Joel living with the fact that he is such a piece of shit and that like you kind of like him in a weird way. At least that's how it went down for me. Um uh but I always think of Maisel as an interesting in terms of storytelling because you realize you know lit RPG readers, we love progression, but progression is something that is inherent in a lot of fiction if you start looking
Hmm.
for it. And so seeing her rise from, housewife to comedian and all the steps she has to go along the way, it delivers the same kind of hype juice and pleasure of seeing
Hmm.
her succeed in the way that we like with our characters in our lit RPG novels. Uh,
Absolutely.
and so yeah, I'm working through the final season of that, which is quite weird at the moment. I got to say, it's doing a lot of flash forwards, which they never did
Okay.
in the past, which is very strange. I don't know if I like it. It's a very interesting artistic choice, but I don't know if I love it. And then I saw the new Dungeons and Dragons movie, which I enjoyed.
Amazing.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And I'm very keen to go see the new Guardians movie, which I've not seen. Uh,
Haven't seen it yet either.
I saw the new Ant-Man, which it got a lot of hate, but I thought it was all right.
Haven't seen it, but I'm looking forward to it.
I thought it was pretty good. And I didn't like the look of it from the trailer because I was like, this doesn't look like Ant-Man. I like Ant-Man to be funny and enjoyable. And those vibes are still there, which is really good.
I'll wait for it to come streaming on
Yeah,
Disney Plus whenever that happens.
for sure. For sure. And then yeah, that's pretty much it. Oh, I'm reading a self-help book by Brene Brown, Rising Strong, which is all about the power of being vulnerable.
That's wonderful.
And it's really nice. Yeah. I really recommend it. It's not, it's it's yeah, it's just good. It's the second book by her that I read called Daring Greatly, and that was the first one, and this one's called Rising Strong. And yeah, it's all about getting better at talking about your emotions and taking risks. And it's really good. I highly recommend it. Yeah.
Excellent. Well, I suppose on my side, I spent I was up until 6 in the morning reading A Summoner Awakens, which is only came across it on Royal Road because Lars was asking about card-based, stories, and I was like, I don't know any of them. I know all the skills, but then Lars was saying I've read that, and I was like, I look on Royal Road. There has to be one. So it's by Kerberos. And apparently, I think it's actually a group of authors, 3 authors that are writing it together.
Oh, wow.
And that's wild. And it's been picked up by Aethon Books, and it's going to be coming out in Audible by Jeff Hayes, I think.
Very cool.
Which is cool. But I read through book 1, and I was like, this is interesting. It's regression, tower climbing, and it's card-based. So...
Okay.
And the regression element happens in chapter 1. The tower is an ongoing thing, and the card-based system is integral, and it's a really interesting system. And
very cool.
what I was very surprised by was the world building elements of it, that are actually quite good, and how it all just kind of the logic of the system, everything like that, just feels right. And
wow.
even though you can tell that due to the windfalls and the Deus Ex Machina sort of elements that give the the OPMC, it's still relatively balanced when you look at how the other families would have been able to put their children through those things. So even though he got all these windfalls and everything like that, he's not ridiculously overpowered. Which I really like. So he's overpowered in terms of capabilities to the reader from what they've seen so far from his weakened state, but against the rest of the world, he has to go with a certain build for his deck.
Okay.
Which means that there's a lot of room for progression there, and the fact that the events of chapter 1 happens 100 years from when this happens, that there's a lot of kind of runway for the story. And my only hope is that it keeps going, because it's very good. And my finger was hovering over the patron for it, the Patreon for it. It's like 10 quid is the lowest level, and I was like,
wow.
that is an expense, but I think they're earning 2,400 a month just on that story. I think it's 9,000 followers or something like that in Royal Road, which is excellent. But yeah, really, really good. So that would be
great.
I
will check that out for sure.
Do check it out, and it's good. There's a few rough edges here and there, obviously, but it's quite good. The other ones is so I'm on Ted Lasso. I'm on the second last episode of it.
Oh yes, so I'm watching that as well. I think I'm on episode 5. I think the last episode I watched, they were in Amsterdam, so I'm
okay
episodes behind, but enjoying
total
it
football. Total football. So yeah, there's great. It's fantastic. Loving it. Recently watched The Diplomat on Netflix, which is very good.
Yeah.
So
I've heard good things.
Yeah, it's your man Rufus Sewell, the guy that was the bad guy in the Man in the High Castle. I'm he has a fantastic character in it, master manipulator. It's wonderful. Other things I am watching at the minute. God, there was something on the tip of my tongue there. But no, Ted Lasso was great. Watched The Diplomat. There was another thing I binged recently that I thought was really good. It's gone out of my head. But yeah, books. Haven't really read anything in the last while. I like, but when a book takes me, it fucking takes me. Like I was like, just
Yeah.
stormed through it. So read book one of A Summoner Awakens. So it's out the full first book on Royal Road. But yeah, I think that's really it. Have to get back to Oshbob, which is Kev Sinclair's one, the Artem, the Rise of
Yeah.
Oshbob. It's a fun story, and I was like, oh, let this catch up in a few chapters. I was up to around chapter 30 or something, and then I
Oh,
look back
nice.
and it's something at like chapter 54, and I'm like, Jesus Christ, Kev, you're like releasing one a day. What is
Yeah.
going on? Like,
Yeah.
um,
Kev's the
but
Beast is like, isn't his like God of the Beast book like 300,000 words long or something? Insane,
oh,
you know.
like at least I remember when I was halfway through the book being like, why am I so slow at this? I'm only
Yeah.
halfway through the book, and then I looked up and it's like God at Feast was 1,174
Yeah.
pages, and I'm like, oh, for fuck's sake, like as in like, but they're great. But no, I like his stories. But yeah, it's have to get back to Lars's one as well, and I need to restart Jez's one, Revenant. But they're doing good stuff at the minute. But yeah, I need to just get back to writing Quest Academy. See how that goes.
This is the constant struggle of, you know,
Yeah,
you have to write and then it's like you want to read lit RPG because you love it, but then if you're writing it all day and reading it all night, you know, it just like you eventually hit a point where it's like I need something else. So that's how I end up watching Ted Lasso because I'm like, I just need like a feel good sports comedy. Because like you know,
okay,
uh,
Jez, I'll focus on Quest Academy.
um, and
Tell me you're my publisher without telling me you're my publisher. Don't read my
yeah, yeah,
story.
yeah.
Keep writing.
I actually thought of another thing I'm reading at the moment. I'm reading through this manga, which is kind of like, I guess, a regression manga called Tokyo Revengers. And
Cool.
it's less regression, it's more like a time loop. But it's about this guy who goes back in time to stop like this like gang war
Mm.
of like teenagers in Tokyo. And yeah, no, I'm really enjoying it. It's a fun vibe.
There is a cool manga. Have you ever heard of Siren?
I've read
Psyren.
Siren. I love Siren.
I love
Yeah,
Siren.
yeah, yeah.
That moment where he's trying to stop them from going to the airport, and then he's just like, "Oh no, I failed." And then the kids in the future, I was like, "Oh my god, this is the best moment ever! I want to write an entire book
Yeah.
about this." That was incredible.
Siren is so underrated. I
I've
was
never
like,
met anyone that's actually read it.
I read it only a couple of years ago. Like it was over lockdown. I was just reading a lot of I feel like over lockdown, my reading habits got weird and I couldn't read normal books. And I was just reading comics the whole time. And like
Yeah.
you know, was just reading. I read all of Siren on my iPad using the Shonen Jump app and just like read the
Is
whole
that
thing.
good? I used to go to these weird scanlation sites and stuff, and then the ads would fucking wreck my head.
Well, the ads are a pain. It's just on the iPad, you flip the iPad horizontally.
Yeah.
That feels nice. Like it's not as good as having the actual like
Yeah.
paperback, but it still feels pretty good. And so
Okay.
yeah, no, I'd say do it.
I'll give that a go. Like I have a few favorites. Like every so often, like when it used to be Christmas and I'd be back at home and stuff like that, and I just nothing to do and stuff like that. What I used to do is I'd reread Greatest Teacher Onizuka and Bakuman.
You're blowing my mind. That's exactly what I do. It's always GTO. It's honestly, last time I was back, I was reading GTO. And I'm like to the point where I'm like, do I go back and don't bring any luggage and just bring an empty suitcase so I can take back all 25 volumes of Great Teacher Onizuka back to London with me?
It's
Because
one of the best ones ever. But did you enjoy Bakuman?
yeah, I have actually. The box set of it is somewhere around here. Oh yeah, here it is.
Oh,
There.
oh,
That's the
fantastic!
box set. Yeah. Yeah, I
That's
liked
so
it a
cool.
lot.
I've only ever read these online. I don't own any mangas, actual books.
The box set makes it easy because then you're like, okay, boom, you give me everything.
Yeah.
No, I love owning the books, and then you can see This is all. Wait, I can't do the point. The
Oh, I see
orange
Bleach,
Naruto. Naruto is all here.
and then Shippuden. I can see.
Yeah, yeah. Just
Wow,
Naruto. And then here's Hunter x Hunter, which I only have up to
never.
volume 18 because
I never got into it.
there's a huge manga. I'd give it a try. I think you'd be into it.
The manga, the anime, they said like, oh, you just have to get through the first, blah, or you have to like it gets better after blah. And I was like, no, that its job is to be good from the start.
No, I think it is good. I could see why you might bounce. I feel like it's a very subversive show, but it doesn't reveal itself to as that
Hisoka was
until
my favorite.
yeah,
Is it Hisoka, the
yeah,
guy
yeah,
with the
yeah,
cards? Yeah, I was like, there's my main man right there.
yeah, yeah.
But
But
didn't stick with it too long.
read the manga, and there's some moments in it that are like it's kind of like the anti shonen. So like it doesn't lead to the hype. It leads to something else that's like deeply upsetting in most arcs, and then you're like, oh, okay.
So
Very
when you were saying
interesting.
about the slice of life or sports ones, Ballroom Koso, um, it's a ballroom manga all about ballroom dancing,
Mm.
and it's great.
Oh
It
wow.
scratched that itch. There was another one that I never remember the name of it, but it was all about cycling. And
Okay.
it was the kid that had like this, like they had put a certain gear on his bike so that he'd have to like, that he wouldn't be able to cycle off by himself a lot. And he always thought he was a terrible cyclist. And then when he tried a different bike, he's like this endurance cyclist, and like
Oh wow.
it was really really fun. And
Oh, that sounds
dive, is
amazing.
it dive or free?
Well, have you
Uh,
ever done Hajime no Ippo, the boxing one? That one's
no, the art
really good.
style always turned me off from the front of it. I was like,
The
this isn't
storytelling
gonna be.
is just, it's really good.
So I moved sideways to Korean web novels and stuff like that, and I absolutely loved them. But one of the first manhwas that I loved was The Breaker.
So
If
I've
you
read
have,
parts, so I'd like to go back and read more of it. I got a little bit overwhelmed reading it because like there were like all these terms that didn't make sense to me or
yes,
something. Yeah.
yes,
Like there was a lot of like I
the
felt
Murim,
alienated.
the Youngin,
Yeah.
or all of these things. Trust me, persevere. It
Okay.
is, and eventually you'll know. Like it's just like, oh, it's the storyline is so fucking convoluted at first, but then when it hits to new waves,
Okay.
you're like, it like new waves is the next series of it. Like I think they had to stop after that because they wanted to work on something else.
Well, but so it's interesting that I know that at least I've noticed that the breaker has been being published in actual paperbacks now. Um, it was Solo Leveling was the first sort of Korean web comic that was getting like paperback releases,
Mhm.
and I'm pretty sure I've seen the breaker in stores as well.
Oh
Um,
wow. I've just realized,
so
sorry, that the third one, so the Breaker originally went from 2010 to 2015, and then
okay,
it stopped, and then it started up again 2022, which I didn't know. So there's apparently more for me to read. So I'm now excited for that.
that is very exciting. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
I'm
Okay, you're
very
making me
happy.
hyped. Maybe I'll go back and read the breaker because I was enjoying what I read of it.
The art style, the fighting scenes, the martial arts is so fucking cool. And the ending of the first series is just one of the coolest, like just it's the best like mentor fucking thing, like mentor and student thing I've ever seen. Like of
Oh,
just like, and but it's just the disbelief of the mentor, of it's like,
oh,
oh well, yeah, and it's the coolest thing ever. But yeah, like it's just really one of those things, and like the hype is so fucking real. It's
okay. That's really good. That sounds really good. Okay, you sold me on it.
hmm. So I think we should probably wrap up. It's been 2 hours 10 minutes. You are officially the longest interview we've had.
Am I? You said they went
Yeah,
2 hours, but
yeah.
have they ever gone
Usually,
over?
usually around the 2 hour mark, we're like, oh, we should probably cut this. But yeah, because people have lives. But
Yeah, yeah,
like I
yeah.
realized that like when we were wrapping up, the manga stuff started. I was like, oh no, no, we talking
Yeah,
more.
yeah, yeah. All right, okay. All right. This man needs to know that I like great teacher Onizuka.
I was so shocked that you're a fan of that one as well.
Well, because it's always
It's
to me like that's like an important, like probably the most important manga of my childhood. Maybe
mhm.
that and Naruto, maybe, but like, and it always feels so niche to me. Like, the fact that you're like this manga about a school teacher, and yeah,
Like it's just like I just love the extremes in every single
mm,
thing. Like just him taking the test was
yeah,
just the coolest thing ever. Like
yeah, yeah, yeah.
like something that sounds so mundane when you explain it like that, or like the crane from the other side, like that, just like swinging across. That was one of the coolest things ever.
I think what I like about, especially reading it now, is seeing the way like the structure of manga storytelling or serialized storytelling that you're used to in like Naruto or My Hero Academia, and seeing how that's used in a different sort of setup.
Like you can tell that with Naruto and Bleach and all of them, it's like, okay, what's the next big fight? What's the next big thing
Yeah,
we're leading towards? And if it doesn't sell, you're gone, you're canned.
yeah.
Whereas on Izuka, it felt like, no, we have a full story to tell and we're going to tell it every single way of it. And if you're hooked, but it's going to be told this way regardless. And it's done so, so well.
Well, I
Um,
think that's so I've gone into the weeds a little bit about this. So there's two, so Naruto, Bleach, My Hero Academia, that's Shonen Jump. And that's the biggest weekly shonen magazine that's released in Japan. But stuff like Fairy Tail, I'm trying to think of other stuff.
I love
Hajime no
Fairy Tail.
Ippo, GTO, Initial D, they're all published in a different magazine called like Kodansha's Weekly Shonen magazine.
Hmm.
And I've come to the suspicion that actually it's this other magazine that has the stuff that really I love, you
Are you a
know.
big fan of Fairy Tail?
I have the box set, but I've actually not read it yet because people have told me, like, I love One Piece, and they've told me that if you like One Piece, Fairy Tail is a similar vibe. So I don't know,
Go
maybe
so far
better.
as to say, yeah, better.
Okay,
Well, but then again, I love Zoro. Zoro is my favorite character in One Piece.
okay.
Roro Zolo, sorry.
How far
Zolo,
into
Zoro. Yeah.
how far into One Piece did you get?
Oh, I got to Alabaster, was it?
Did you finish Alabasta?
No.
See, so this is the crazy thing. To me, it's the end of Alabasta. So you have to read 22 volumes. But at the
Yeah.
end of that Alabasta, I was like, I'm in. I'm like,
Oh, wow.
it's so good. And only at the end of Alabasta do you see even the potential of the larger meta plot of the whole series. You see the gear turn where you go, oh, uh-huh,
Yeah,
interesting.
so like I was all in for Hawkeye Mihawk and Roro Zolo, like that whole thing, like his
Yeah.
like the arcs and that I thought were just extraordinary, and I was like, I'm in. But it just kept getting weirder, and I just wasn't getting my fix of what I wanted.
I
So,
think if you read it arc by arc and take a break, I think that's the best way to do it. Is that to read it as, because like that's the thing I love about Naruto. Like Naruto just especially those first 28 volumes, it just moves. And but like yeah, One Piece is like it's just about the journey and hanging
hmm.
out with your buds, and you're in no rush. You'll go to another island and spend 10 volumes on that island, and then you'll go somewhere else and spend another 10 volumes there.
Who's your favorite character in Naruto?
Ooh, it would probably be Rock Lee. Like, but like,
Shikamaru.
oh, okay, interesting. Okay, to me, Rock Lee just like, and that's why I also like Naruto a lot too. Just like, but like the story of like the underdog guy who's gonna do whatever it takes to like
Hmm.
follow his dreams. I just got like so much time for that energy.
Lazy
Yeah.
genius always got it for me. As in, like,
Okay.
it just so
Interesting.
I was
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
yeah, this is brilliant. But
Yeah.
like, I remember when the Choji stuff happened and I cried. I was like, I never cared about Choji. How the fuck did you do this to me, you
Yeah,
bastards?
I know. Oh, it's so good. Okay, but I think all right. So you were wrapping up the show, and then I started to yell at you about manga. So I don't know.
No, it's totally fine. I'm just conscious that Geneva is probably just like in a room, just staring at the two of us talking.
Oh shit! Maybe that's what she was really trying to tell us at the very beginning when she was like, "It's Mother's Day." And we're like, "Oh yeah, we'll make a note of that at the beginning." And that was
I didn't even think of that, but that's way funnier.
Yeah. So okay, let's. I don't know how do we normally end these things?
So you check the private chat. She just spit out her water.
I just spit out my water. Oh, and okay, yeah. I didn't actually see. I saw the comments coming live on our screen, but I didn't realize.
Oh
I
no,
think I caught most of them, but I didn't see the side thing here.
no.
Okay. Yeah.
But yeah, but but no, it's fine. I'm just sending private messages to Jacob. Anyway, but yeah, look, everyone, thank you so much. If anyone managed to stay on this long, I'll be astounded. But yeah, look, thank you so much for joining us. Oh God, Jez. Oh, it's probably because I called him out in the last live that he wasn't there. And now he's just like, I'm not allowing that to happen. See if he bitches about me again.
Yeah. There you
go. But no, thanks for watching, Jez, and everyone else. But it's been an absolute pleasure. Any final thoughts? Tell people to go buy Second Chance Swordsman 2, which should be called Third Chance Swordsman.
No, because he's still dealing with the same second chance because he's going back.
Okay.
All right, but yes, Second Chance Swordsman 2 is now out. Please check it out. If you haven't read my other stuff, I've also written Tower Climber, Arcane Kingdom Online. That'd be amazing if you check that out as well. And just everybody keep being awesome and hanging out. And yeah, this has been so much fun. Thank you for having me.
Oh no, pleasure is all mine. Thank you, everyone, and good night. Geneva, you can get rid of us whenever.